Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto is stoic like Itachi. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by ThatTypeOfGuy and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Naruto ran his hand through the blonde mop that was his hair. It felt sticky and wet, obviously from a hard day's training, drenching him in sweat. He didn't really care that he looked as tired and ragged as he did. It showed he had worked hard, something to be proud of. He had always strove to be better than he was, to be better than the best. This could only be achieved by those who worked harder than anyone else, who strove for nothing but to be the best. He had done well in that pursuit, pushing his very limits, but alas, it had not made his terrible life any better. In fact, it had made it worse. Looking out across the village, he scowled. This was the village that had wronged him so. Throughout the years, all the ones that consisted of his short life, it had treated him like nothing more than dirt, worse, even. At first it had been the orphanage. His parents had died the night of the QB incident, leaving him alone, where they had neglected him in so many ways, not feeding him, beating him, poisoning him, not letting him near other kids, which also stunted his social development, not clothing him properly, and not even cleaning him properly. And with these forms of neglect, he had developed cases of illnesses, although they had usually disappeared very quickly. Social retardation, general retardation, deprivation, dwarfism, the lack of physical height caused by lack of emotional care, malnutrition, and a large desire for attention that lead him to doing unsavory, or even criminal actions to gain attention. All in all, they had fucked him up something rotten. Yet he hadn't truly suffered until he had been kicked out of the orphanage, yes, kicked out of a council-funded institute by those magnanimous care workers. Worst thing was he was only 4. So, at age 4 he had set off into the big wide world, or village, really. At first he hadn't known what to do. Who would have when they were only 4 years old and retarded? But he had quickly gotten into a routine of scavenging and stealing, developing a way to stay alive. For 2 years he had lived on the streets, fending for himself from local gangs, eating the dirtiest of foods, sleeping outside on the most wet and cold of nights, and having absolutely no contact with people, unless you counted the ends of their fists or feet. Thus he had gotten even worse intellectually, socially, and by ways of physical health. He had eventually found a piece of light amongst the darkness. The Sandame Hokage had found him wobbling down the streets in tattered and torn clothes, smelling worse than the dumps, and with the latest bloody lip. "What happened to you, child?" he had asked in a worried tone, a concerned frown marring his features as he bent down to inspect him. Naturally he had flinched from human contact, too used to pain and suffering that usually accompanied it. The old man must have realized then that he was scared of him. "Sure, don't worry, I will not hurt you, I swear," he had promised, voice soothing and low. "Tell me, what is your name? I will take you back to your parents." Startled by his sudden warmth and kindness, he had no idea what to do other than comply. "And in Naruto," he had stuttered, both still in fear and because he still did not know how to talk at the age of 6, Uzumaki. He hadn't even realized he had said his own last name wrong, but the old man had. He had watched as the Hokage's face distorted between so many emotions: shock, rage, kindness, sympathy. At first Naruto thought he was angry with him and had attempted to flee, but his strong hand had clasped Naruto's shoulder, not letting him run. "Wait, ma boy. I will not hurt you," he had swore again, voice so soft and kind it had enveloped him. This one man, this one human being had offered him kindness. For the first time in his life, he felt the soft touch of a caring hand, and not the clenched fist of rage. He had found hope amongst the darkness. It had taken a while after that, but he had finally managed to piece together a sentence that resembled what he meant when the old man had asked him why he wasn't in the orphanage. "I was told not to come back. Evil has no home." That day Naruto had found himself in the care of many masked men, who he would later find out were Umbu Black Ops. For weeks he stayed there, learning how to speak, clean himself, cook, wash, all the things a normal person needed. He had then been moved into an apartment, an old, run-down complex that looked like it might collapse tomorrow. He hadn't complained though. Instead he had cried and thanked the old man with tears and sincerity that only a child could produce, a damaged one, but a child nonetheless. And so, for the time being at least, he had lived happily, content in his peace. The Hokage visited regularly, dropping off his stipend, teaching him about social functions, more on how to speak and other things. Other days he would take Naruto out, to the park, Hokage Monument, Hokage Tower, anywhere Naruto had wanted. It had been wonderful, having someone care for him. He had gained more loved ones as well. The Ichirakus, a small family of father and daughter who ran a small ramen stand, had accepted him and treated him with nothing but kindness. Most days he would go down there and order bowls and bowls full of ramen, just to stay and chat with them. Sometimes they even let him eat for free. God, he hoped they were in a better place right now. They deserved Elysium. He had joined the academy for ninja a year later, 1 year earlier than normal. It had been fun and boring at first, making new friends and learning crappy facts. Knowledge was never his favorite thing, unless it pertained to physical prowess such as jutsu. Eventually though, parents had sowed the seeds of hate within their children, starting from subtle warnings, a clever play on the pranks he did as a way of validation, and eventually just blunt demands that they no longer went near Naruto. He was alone again and bored. Very bored. The days after that had been spent in immature stupidity and naivety. He started by trying to gain attention achieved through his horrendous orange jumpsuit and his childish pranks that had earned him the moniker of Konoha's prankster king from hell. Suffice to say, it had worked, just not the way he planned. The beatings had come thick and fast from that point on. He could get beaten up by villagers or bullies at least once a week, sometimes twice or even thrice a week. It had been horrible, especially as he had not fully understood why it happened, but he had carried on. He could solve anything he wanted by just believing he could. Believe it! What a foolish notion. Everything still had time to get worse, though. After this he had been determined to prove he was the best, even if the instructors neglected and sabotaged him. He grew to hate knowledge, for how could knowing that the Shodan Hokage particularly hated tea even begin to help him win a fight? How foolish could he have been? Very. He started hindering himself, making it easier for the civilians to get him, all because of his own arrogance. Knowledge was power, not physical prowess. Shinobi operated to different rules, but he had failed to understand. Failed to even see reality until it was too late. His stupidity had eventually led to the harm of others, the Ichiraku family, because they had served and fed Naruto. When all other stores refused to, the civilians had taken it upon themselves to teach these fools a lesson. They had taken the two, Tsuchiyaji-san Naimnichin, and had done things to them that no civilian should have ever had to face. Afterwards, some people had handed themselves in, too ashamed of the crimes they had committed. Apparently, they were only supposed to scare the chefs, but their leader had made things take a much darker turn. They had asked the family to stop serving the demon child, but the family had stood steadfastly by their loyalty to Naruto. He wished they hadn't. From the odd pieces of what he had heard had happened to them, he swore he would never let the men who did that die a peaceful death. He never thought the two would go through torture for him and eventually die at the hands of those men. That day Naruto had finally given in to the nagging voice at the back of his mind. Revile them. Hate them. It had whispered in his head, and so he had. He decided he would no longer love this village, no longer trust it. He would now move forward for himself, trust only himself and those who proved themselves, love only himself and those he chose to. No longer would he be the village's personal punching bag. One day, he had promised, I will leave you all behind, I will seek my own freedom. He had changed shortly after. No longer did he prank, no longer did he wear that awful jumpsuit, no longer did he refuse to learn. He was now the model student, silent, listened to every word, revised, practiced constantly, done all extracurriculum activities, and most of all, he learned why. He remembered that day perfectly. Who are you? Naruto had asked calmly, coldly. He certainly wasn't as calm as he pretended to be. The man in question looked at Naruto impassively, his features schooled to perfect stoicism. His unemotional expression, matched with the way he held himself, told Naruto a few things as he looked him up and down. He was an experienced ninja. The way he walked looked more like the stalking prowl of a deadly hunter, silent and deadly. His posture was noble and regal, making it look as though everything else was below him. His red eyes with 3 tomo marked the Sharingan, making him an Uchiha. Lastly, the blood-stained clothes showed he had recently killed. I am Itachi Uchiha. To answer your next question, I am here to tell you the reason behind your suffering all these years, he replied, ever so calmly. The blood that dripped from the ends of his clothes and sword did nothing to break said calmness. Naruto kept his hand on the kunai that was hidden amongst his clothes, but listened nonetheless. He didn't trust him, but he was intrigued by his last statement. What would that reason be, and why would you tell me? He asked skeptically. You look more like my executioner, and someone else's, covered in blood. Itachi chuckled, it was dry and held no mirth. You seem more calm than what you used to be like, he idly commented. But to answer your questions, I wish to tell you because we are the same. Raising an eyebrow, Naruto chuckled this time. Really? So you fear to walk the streets because you may be killed in broad daylight. You are shunned and hated. You wish for nothing but an escape? He asked darkly. He watched as Itachi looked at him, sizing him up, looking through him and his innermost workings. He would not admit it, but that look unnerved him more than the ones of hate and spite did. This look was far more dangerous than those. After a few moments Itachi seemed like he had seen enough, and so he threw down a scroll onto Naruto's lap. I meant we are the same in the fact that we bear a dark burden to protect Konoha, one that no one else can. We are, or, in my case, will be, hated for the way in which neither of us have the love that we want, but cannot attain, he replied ever so calmly. Again, it seemed nothing could break his serenity. Even talking about something that clearly had, or did, sadden him. This time, though, it was Naruto who appraised Itachi in a different light. This man was far more complex than he thought. He had spoken of burdens, protecting Konoha, unattainable love and the ever-present hate. Some of those things didn't even make sense, like how he was protecting Konoha? What do you mean by that, and what's the scroll for? He asked pointedly. Itachi turned around then and started walking sinking into that prowling step as he glided along the floor like a ghost, without a sound. That scroll will tell you everything, and help you along. Goodbye, Naruto. I will see you again someday. And like that he was gone, nothing but leaves in the wind as he disappeared. For days Naruto had tried to build up the nerve to open up the scroll. He was scared about what he would find inside. Did he really want to find out why a village full of people hated him? He hadn't known. He especially hadn't liked the possibility that the villagers may have been vindicated by their vindictive nature. But he had no choice, he just couldn't not know why. It would kill him if he never knew why. So, after days of trepidation, he opened the scroll. What he found inside of Itachi's scroll had solidified his utter hate for Konoha's older generation. He felt the urge to kill the people who had made his life so difficult. For weeks that feeling of rage would remain, never failing to leave his side like a faithful shadow. How could human beings be so shallow, so full of hate, so vindictive? He had schooled himself, though, no reason to lose himself to rage and make things worse. Reading the rest of the scroll, he had found several seals. Apparently, Itachi had known that the academy had been sabotaging him, or at least tried to. So, with that in mind, he had left compilations of basic knowledge. These subjects had been difficult and easy in many ways. The art of stealth, which focused on techniques for reducing sound made with movements, how to blend in with the environment, and how to leave as little of a trace behind as possible. Throwing weapon techniques, motions for faster throws, places to aim for when throwing, how to create a diversion with thrown weapons, Academy Taijutsu, as well as a unique version of Taijutsu called Koiken, Fast Fist, a variant of Goken and Jiken that focused on fast and precise strikes that targeted the weak points of the body, and a large variety of other small, but helpful things. The real topping on the cake, though, had been the 3 chakra control exercises, tree climbing, water walking, and an exercise that focused on using chakra to make a solid object levitate off of the user's body by about an inch. For someone who had a vast amount of chakra and little control, it was worth more to him than any S-rank technique. There had also been the basic elemental techniques that had been within the scroll, a water technique that converted large amounts of chakra into water within one's body. Good for the fact that he could never die of thirst, but couldn't produce enough water for a water technique to be effective. A fire technique that could start a fire, useful for cooking food and starting fires to conserve heat. A wind technique that would disperse his scent, so no one was able to follow him via smell. And lastly there was Shunshin, to help him learn how to send chakra to certain parts of the body. All in all, Itachi had gifted him with useful knowledge that would one day save his life, and not just some flashy jutsu to make him feel cool. He doubted he would have been as good as he was now, had he not received this knowledge. With the firm grounding in the shinobi arts that Itachi had gifted him, he soon claimed the spot at the top of the class, Rookie of the Year. At first, most were surprised by this sudden turn of events, especially his new class that was the same age as him. Others were angry, like Sasuke who refused to lose to him and constantly challenged him. Taijutsu spars were won with ease, his quick understanding of Koiken allowing him to pick Sasuke apart. Ninjutsu was where he lost, but only just as he was unable to create a bunshin due to his monstrous chakra reserves. Sasuke didn't feel as good about that victory when he had told him he was simply too powerful to do the bunshin. In fact, he clearly remembered Sasuke had been a little enraged. Shuriken Jutsu and Kunijutsu were a tie as both boys hit absolutely perfect. That didn't comfort Sasuke, though. And lastly was academics. Naruto got 100% on all written tests due to the only thing he did outside of school was revision and training. Over the years Sasuke had continued to push him harder and harder, furthering his skills to the point that he would have been a genin 2 years before the norm, had he been able to do the bunshin. But alas, it constantly evaded him, always slipping through his fingers at the last moments. Even now, yes, now, this present day, even as he found himself sitting atop the 4th Hokage's head, looking out across Konohagakure no Sato, the village of the 4 most powerful shinobi to ever live, and renowned founders of the current shinobi world. Through the dark night, he could see the lights of homes coming on as families arrived home, lights turning off as stores closed. It was beautiful, he had to admit, the calm serenity and warm glow the village gave off as it lit up. But through all his observations, one thing stood out above the rest. On the highest floor of the Hokage tower, the lights to the Hokage's office went out as Hiruzen Sarutobi went home. It was now time for him to steal the test scroll. As Mizuki team had called it, he knew it was really the forbidden scroll of seals. He did not let it show though, as who was he to not trust his sensei? He hadn't been fooled in the slightest as Mizuki team lied to him about the second test to pass for amazing students who couldn't do bunshin, reserved for those who were exceptional but unlucky. He knew that greedy and stupid teacher was planning on framing him, killing him and making his own escape. Little did Mizuki realize that he was the puppet and scapegoat that Naruto would use to get what he liked, the forbidden scroll of seals, and afterwards he could just blame Mizuki and say he believed his teacher. How could the old man not believe him, as sentimental as he was? Hell, the Hokage would let Naruto off with anything. So, with a grin plastering his face, Naruto set off to steal something back from the village that had wronged him so, and he felt vindicated. Tonight would only be the start of the plans for his freedom, as he would soon escape this accursed nightmare that was his life, this corner of hell he called home. Soon, so soon he could taste it, he would break free from his shackles. Watch out world, soon you'll be meeting Naruto Uzumaki Databao. Chapter 2, The Tiring Existence of Life. Trust is the sound of a grave dog's bark. Trust is the sound of betrayal in the dark. Trust is the sound of a soul's last breath. Trust is the sound of death. Wheel of Time. Robert Jordan. In the outer woods of Konoha, a black blur flashed through the treetops, soundless in his movements, not a single branch making a noise as he landed and departed from it. The wind blew slightly as he ran, dispersing his scent so that it would be impossible to track his exact location, although Inuzuka would be able to follow his fated scent to a small degree. Dropping to the ground in a silent crouch, a black-clad boy looked all around as he barely made a move, straining his ears and nose to find any traces of an approaching enemy. He found no one. Deciding he was in the clear, Naruto hefted the scroll off of his back and unfurled it, smiling to himself as he prepared to take something from Konoha as reparation for the years of torment. He couldn't help but be surprised by the sheer knowledge this scroll held. It was lucky then that he hadn't went to where Mizuki had told him to. Instead, he had prudently planned for this ahead of time, allowing for a larger amount of time to learn more. The location he had picked was about half an hour away from the location Mizuki had asked, and it had been perfect. It would take about an hour for Mizuki to actually reach the designated spot, after he had alerted the Hokage, of course. Furthermore, he would reach that area to not find Naruto there, and hence he would have to look for him like everyone else. This was the tricky part, though, as he wanted Mizuki to find him first, and not some benevolent shinobi who felt like slaying the demon. Naruto knew any other shinobi would kill him on the spot without getting his side of the story, which he didn't want to happen, whereas Mizuki would take his time to gloat, which is what he needed as he could fight Mizuki, kill him, and by doing so would release enough chakra for the Hokage to find him himself with the legendary crystal ball viewing technique. After the Hokage had located him, he would recall all shinobi and send Umbu to pick up him, Mizuki, and the scroll. What he gained from that extra time it took for Mizuki to find him, though, would be priceless in comparison to the risk he was taking, as he could die any day anyway. That extra 1 to 2 hours would allow for him to learn more techniques, better preparing him for the outside world, and could be used as bargaining chips for his safe induction into another village. Scrambling his thoughts and satisfactory pride and smugness in his accomplishments, he focused on his task at hand. These techniques were all in here for a reason. Most things in here would be jutsu, but there would also be sealed items that had been classified as forbidden for one reason or another. There would be seals and there would be knowledge. Unlike what most thought, this scroll didn't just contain forbidden techniques that had been classified as dangerous for one reason or another, it contained all the knowledge of each reigning Hokage. From their inauguration as Hokage until the day they died, each Kage had written every single one of their own techniques within this scroll, making it a trove of vast knowledge and power. Quickly reading through each technique and description, he tried to store away as much information as possible on each. He did this so that he could decide which one would be the most beneficial to him. He didn't want to pick up some random technique that would do him no good. 20 minutes later he had read a majority of the techniques, ranging from suicidal jutsu, to raging torrents of water and arcs of lightning created by the Night-Dame, to complex illusions and creations of forests by the Show-Dame, to seals and sealess jutsu of the Yondame, to devastating fire jutsu of the Sand-Dame. All of these priceless and powerful pieces of knowledge, and yet two things made him glad that he had went through with this. He looked across the long scroll, his eyes locking onto one word, one name, Uzumaki. It took all of his concentration to not scream out in rage when he saw the long list of Uzumaki's sealing techniques, clan techniques. It didn't take him long to figure that out, that Uzumaki was a clan name, especially seeing as every sealing technique within the scroll was labeled Uzumaki clan sealing technique. Not only were there sealing techniques, but a whole myriad of techniques. He could definitely see some of these being extremely powerful, especially the water and wind-based ones. He could see whirlpool shields that drained chakra from the attack and fed it to the user, wind dragons and water dragons, and so many more. But the techniques didn't end there, they just kept going. Through his rage, though, it made him smile. He smiled for a simple reason: he had been betrayed by the last person he truly thought had loved him, had not lied to him, the Sand-Dame Hokage. Why did he smile when he found out he had been betrayed by the last person he trusted? Simple, he no longer felt he would be betraying the old man, the only reason that had made him feel bad about leaving Konoha. He no longer thought that, though, now that the old man had betrayed him by not telling him about his own family. He could leave freely now, no regrets, just a clean break. Then his eyes flicked to another name, this time a technique, Shadow Clone. Unlike its weaker counterpart, the clone, it didn't require the fine control and minuscule amount of chakra and wasn't an illusion. On the contrary, it required large reserves of chakra and very little control, and created a solid clone capable of dealing physical damage and using chakra. Perfect for him. Furthermore, it had a very unique ability. A characteristic that is unique to the Shadow Clone technique is that any experience the clones gain during their existence is transferred to the user once they are dispersed. This makes the technique ideal for spying, since the user can simply send a clone to spy on a target, then have the clone disperse itself without returning to pass the information back to the user. It's also useful for training purposes, since the total amount of experience the user gains is multiplied by the total number of clones being used to train. For example, if a user creates one shadow clone and trains together with this clone for 1 hour, then dispels the clone, the user gains 2 hours of training in 1 hour by adding the hours of clone and the user together. Asterisk note, can be used to train in fighting styles, hand-to-hand combat, throwing techniques and any other weapon technique. This is due to muscle memory, that which we train with to help remember routines, kata and other motor tasks. Most would believe this to be a physical aspect as it involves muscle, but is really to do with memorizing the use and movement of muscle motors, which is a function of memory and thus trainable with the Shadow Clone's memory retaining method. This technique would be perfect for his repertoire, allowing for a large and versatile user of his massive reservoir of chakra. Not only that, but he could probably create 20 to 30 of these things at once with his chakra capacity, allowing him to get training down 30 times quicker. This would be perfect for when he left Konoha, as it would allow him to train much better even if he didn't have a Jonin sensei. He quickly remembered what it was, though, a forbidden technique. Quickly glancing at the downsides, he realized why. If someone did not have enough chakra to split it in half, they would die from chakra exhaustion. Furthermore, due to the influx of memories, he could also develop mental stress, accumulated from each of the clones used. For instance, instead of feeling tired due to 1 hour of training, that could be multiplied by 30, then he could train for 8 hours and feel 30 times more tired. So, it had a limit to how many he could train with. Creating them was no problem. Though, he figured he could use more in a fight due to them picking up less memories and stress, whereas if they were training they would develop more memories and mental stress. So, he could use as many as he could in a fight, just he couldn't train with too many. Quickly reading through the instructions of creating a shadow clone, he found it an easy technique to do, in theory. He simply had to take exactly half of his chakra and mold it into a solid form. Using the principles for transformation would allow for him to create the image and size that made up his body. Then he had to create a solid exterior by focusing some of the chakra to the outer perimeters of the clone's body to reinforce it, also allowing the rest of the chakra to be safely contained, and lastly to use a small amount of yang chakra to breathe life into his creation. Simple, really. Within 10 minutes he had it down pat. What he didn't expect was to see roughly 500 copies of himself waiting patiently for orders, good little slaves that they were. Naruto smiled gleefully, though. This was beyond his wildest expectations, and the funny thing was that had only taken half of his chakra. Using his newly created clone, he had it do the technique itself until it couldn't make any more, each new clone doing the same. Going by this showed him something straight away. In battle, after he has created the first clone, he should have that make more clones, allowing him to keep half his chakra instead of needlessly having it again and again. Furthermore, he could create a little more than 1,000 clones if he needed to, and right now he had over 500 clones to copy as much as he could from the Scroll of Seals. Bringing his hand to his forehead, Naruto chuckled. It started with a small shaking of his body, then his body was racked with laughter as his chuckles turned to full-blown laughter. He had come to take away a few techniques from Konoha as revenge, but now he would take them all. He could later sell it off to another village. It would gain him masses of trust from the selected village that he wished to ingratiate himself with. It might even lead to Konoha's downfall, should he choose someone like Kumo or Iwa. This was all too perfect. For someone with a life with nothing but bad luck, he had just had more luck than any one person he had ever heard of. Truly, Karma was a bitch, and today she was pissed with Konoha. Coming down from his mirth, the blonde pulled out the sealing scroll that had once contained Itachi's useful techniques, all those years ago. Unsealing the parchment, and ink he had brought with him to copy as many techniques as he could, he quickly created shadow clones of them, using the same principles as for the copies of him, just with more chakra within each than there was within his copies. He'd done this so that they wouldn't disappear anytime soon, allowing time to copy them to real paper that wouldn't disperse and leave him without the information. The paper and ink was quickly distributed to each clone. The scroll was unfurled to its full length to allow all clones to start copying. Whilst his clones were doing that, though, Naruto decided to check something out. Moving to the end of the scroll, Naruto bent down to start checking the items at the bottom. He had told his clones to copy all listed techniques within the scroll that weren't suicidal, but he hadn't told them to look at the sealed items, which he was just about to do. There was a reason why he wanted to do this personally, though. He still didn't quite trust the shadow clone's learning and memory transference faculties. That or he might have made one or two of them wrong. If either of those were wrong, then the clones could end up picking up an all-powerful weapon that could kill with ease, but drain the user's life force constantly. So, he decided to set about it himself whilst the clones just copied the techniques word for word, something they couldn't get wrong. Hopefully. He started to read the description of each item within the scroll, carefully taking note of their pros and cons. He would take note of any that had specific functions, ones that were in there due to the need of very large chakra reserves, a problem he didn't have, and any he would be able to use after a load of training. By the time he was finished, he was quite surprised by the number of items with powers that Konoha held. Most young ninja heard the stories of Misa's fabled 7 swords, the Sage of 6 Paths tools, the Night-Aim Hokage's Sword of Lightning, and a few others. So, most held these types of weapons up as legendary items that were almost impossible to obtain. But he was wrong. It seemed it was quite easy to get these items, and there were many of them. What was actually difficult was finding these items, but ones that didn't have some impossible requirement to wield or have some taxing cost for its use. These were mostly all death traps. That being said, he did find some things that he could use. This was a sword. It was called Kaitensuru no Shinkashur, the Whirling Crimson Death. It was sheathed in a dark as midnight black sheath with a bluish-silver design that depicted a set of whirlpools coming up the length of the case, from bottom to top, running parallel to a set of silver clouds. whirlpools under a silver night sky. The cases were beautiful enough to make him realize just how much it must have cost to actually make these, as only the finest of artists could make something so startlingly beautiful and haunting. But when he unsheathed the blade, he had to double his opinion of the master craftsmen who put their souls into these pieces. The handle was a dark crimson, as dark as the lifeblood it would take from its enemies. The pommel and hilt were both as black as the sheath, going with its theme yet again. The hilt was circular of design with a spiraling pattern that resembled a whirlpool. It had the added effect of having red flowing within the whirlpool, as if someone had just bled into it as it spiraled away, twisting and stretching the bloody flow within the black whirlpool. Again, the beauty haunted him, as the depiction seemed to say it would take blood away from any who opposed it. The blade itself was about 18 inches long, about as long as his arm, and a little bit longer with the handle. The sword, a kodachi, he realized by its measurement, curved all the way to the tip, but remained fairly straight. It was a black color, as it kept in theme, unlike most blades which were of a silver color. Running down the cutting edge was a line of imprinted silver clouds, small in size so that they did not reach the middle of the blade. All in all, he thought it was the most beautifully haunting thing he had ever seen, and couldn't think of a more beautiful thing for his enemies to see before they died. Holding it by the sheath, he decided not to use it today, as he had no training with the sword, so it would only hinder him in his up-and-coming battle. The fact that he could hold it, though, proved he was an Uzumaki. The reason for this was in the very description of the blade. Only those who were from the Uzumaki main house could hold the blade, because those who weren't were completely drained of their chakra until they were put into a comatose state. Seeing as he still had all his chakra and was currently walking around just proved that, so he went to get the sword sealed up. Hiruzen Sarutobi was having a horrible day. The worst he had had in many years, he might say. It had started out well enough, but things quickly got bad fast. It had started off with the usual mountain of paperwork that he and his shadow clones had to go through. Then he had to sort out a bunch of domestic disputes between the various lords and ladies of High no Kuni that resided within Konoha. Then he found out that Naruto had failed to pass again due his large chakra reserves. Danzo had then came to him demanding he be allowed to train the Jinchuriki. All in all, he'd had a very long day, but eventually he had been able to go home and return to his bed. He had spent an hour reading an adventure novel by some ninja from Konoha, and it had been an enthralling read. After his reading he had proceeded to go to sleep, but Murphy's Law seemed to strike. He had got dressed straight away when he felt the seals on his arm that indicated someone had stolen the forbidden scroll of seals started to burn. It was imperative that the scroll was returned. He had found out from his surveillance seals that Naruto was the one to take it. Of course, he knew that Naruto had been tricked. For starters, no one below the rank of Chunin even knew where the scroll resided, much less that it existed. That led to the conclusion that someone of Chunin rank or above had told Naruto where it was. As for him taking it, the professor knew that the young boy would be in emotional turmoil right now due to his failure, making him easy to manipulate. So, someone of Chunin rank or above had manipulated him into taking the scroll. The question was, though, who would want to take the scroll? Or better yet, who would want Naruto to get caught with the scroll and killed because of it? He knew someone at the academy had been supplying an unidentified enemy with information about Konoha, but he had yet to find out who the teacher and enemy were. It was most likely that said teacher had offered this as some sort of test for him to gain genin status, playing on Naruto's biggest desire. With all this processed within a minute, he had sent out Umbu and all village Jonin to find the scroll with strict orders to bring Naruto back alive and well, and that any Chunin found searching for or with Naruto was to be brought straight back to the Hokage for treason. He didn't send any Chunin so it would be easy to find the perpetrator, as he would be the only Chunin out there who knew of the scroll and Naruto. Let the traitor be caught in his own trap. Now, with a heavy heart and tired mind, Hiruzen Sarutobi waited for the return of his grandson, and secondly the scroll. He would be able to deal with the loss of the scroll as he wouldn't mind spending months hunting it down, but the loss of Naruto would hurt him too much. Would be another failure that he wouldn't be able to atone for. Come home, Naruto. Please. Naruto grunted as blocked a high kick with his forearm, then pushed the leg past him using its own momentum. In the slight opening that made in Mizuki's guard as he was off balance, Naruto brought his leg out to meet the kneecap of the leg that was still on the ground. He smirked in satisfaction as Mizuki's knee buckled and he had to roll away to quickly avoid another set of attacks. Mizuki came back up, crouched on one knee as he glared at Naruto. "I'll kill you, demon bastard," he growled. The fight was definitely not going as Mizuki had planned. In fact, he was losing due to his own negligence. Mizuki had come across Naruto as he pretended to be reading the scroll on his own, when in actual fact it was a shadow clone. Mizuki, though, hadn't known that and stabbed it in the back with a kunai. But when the clone had exploded into a cloud of smoke, Naruto had used its cover to get into Mizuki's guard and batter it down as he threw quick, decisive strikes at his weak points. With a few strikes in on his knees, ribs, and shoulder, Mizuki had been effectively weakened and wasn't able to move all that fast as he was in a world of pain. Now, with the last shot on his knee, Naruto would say it was fractured and had assured him the match. Can't come up with anything more original, Mizuki-team? Or are you gonna start sprouting out some crap about me being Kyuubi? It won't work seeing as I already know the truth. He smiled viciously as he saw Mizuki drop his jaw in shock. Now let's end this. Quickly unsealing the sword from his scroll, Naruto ran at his former sensei with a kunai in one hand, sword in the other. His first strike came in as a downward slash that Mizuki blocked with a kunai, the next was with the sword as it came inside his guard with a quick thrust. His opponent showed why he was a chunin though, as he barely knocked it aside with another kunai and attempted to roll away again. Naruto wasn't going to let that happen though, as he knew that Mizuki was a long-range specialist, especially with those ridiculous shuriken on his back. Quickly calling his shadow clones out of hiding, he had them attack Mizuki from all sides whilst he provided some long-range support with kunai and shuriken. He decided to not engage Mizuki in close-quarters combat with his sword, like he had thought earlier on. But he had found a small flaw in his earlier plan. If he had sealed the sword away and made it magically appear later on, the Hokage would wonder what else Naruto had sealed away and would ask to see. He couldn't let that happen. So, Naruto had decided to use it to make the finishing blow and later say to the Hokage that he had unsealed them due to the description which stated that only an Uzumaki could wield them. But Mizuki team had proven he at least deserved the rank of Chunin, as even after the successful ambush on Naruto's part, a fractured kneecap and bruised shoulder, he could still fend Naruto off. This led to Naruto deciding to just spam cones at him and use the sword as the end game, christening his new partnership with it. Naruto smiled as he heard an ear-piercing screech of rage and pain. It was time to end this, time to end the tiring existence of this life. So, after finding out that the test was a fake and that Mizuki was a traitor, I proceeded to fight him. As you can imagine, his outweighed my own and I was steadily beaten back. But with the aid of these new swords and about 500 shadow clones, Mizuki was swiftly beaten. After this I came back here with the scroll and reported straight to you, GG. Hiruzen sighed in relief as he sat back. From what Naruto had told him, he could safely judge Naruto as innocent, especially seeing as he brought the scroll back himself and defeated a traitor. Furthermore, with Naruto already possessing the ability to use Shadow Clone, Danzo might stop nagging him about training the bot. He was also very proud of Naruto for doing what he had done, except the actual theft, but that wasn't his fault. I must say, I am very proud of you, Naruto-kun. What you did tonight was spectacular. He started, then looked at Naruto with a warm smile. You evaded Konoha's elite Umbu-guard when you got the scroll, showing your great aptitude for stealth. You then proceeded to leave with a high-value item and not be caught, and even the Inuzuka were unable to track you, showing a great aptitude for infiltration, assassination and stealing. After that you showed good knowledge on tactical location, picking somewhere where the trees totally covered the ground, hiding everything in shadow, covering your location, and was also a great place to ambush as the shrubbery provided good cover for hidden assailants. You learned multi-shadow clone jutsu within an hour, showing prodigious ninjutsu skill that has not been seen since Itachi Uchiha, and chakra reserves that surpass my own. You went on further to be able to realize that the scroll you had retrieved was far too valuable to be used in such a mundane test, showing key observational skills. With this information you used it to lay an ambush with well-placed shadow clones and misdirection, all within the space of a few minutes, showing exemplary tactical skills, plan-making, combat skills, ninjutsu skills and level-headedness. I was just doing what I was taught. Naruto chuckled as he waved his hands at the praise, clearly not used to it. He wasn't willing to let it go, though. Naruto deserved his praise, as so little people took the time to ever talk to him, let alone compliment him. No, Naruto, you are every bit deserving of this praise. Could any other genin pull off what you did? And I'm pretty sure that you don't get taught that wind jutsu you used to get rid of your scent, the intricacies of infiltration and the planning you used to time it after I had left. In fact, none of those skills were taught to you in the academy, just the theory behind your choices. What you showed was the skill set I would expect of a chunin, not a failed genin. He stood suddenly and walked over to a set of wooden drawers. Quickly opening up the mission assignment drawer, he drew out a black scroll and filled in the details. 5 minutes later he handed to Naruto. For returning an SSS rank item to Konoha, ending a domestic threat to our national security, and killing a C-rank traitor, I, Sarutobi Hiruzen, award you the completion of an S-rank mission, he stated as he threw the scroll to Naruto. Naruto seemed surprised as he caught it, not quite sure what to do or say. He watched as Naruto looked at him, and frowned. This should only be a B rank for dealing with a traitor, and returning a stolen item, he said slowly, still trying to find a way out of it. Hiruzen chuckled. My boy, most S ranks aren't the type of mission that you think they are. Most of the time it's just silencing a lord or lady without being caught in an enemy nation, infiltrating rogue organizations, or finding leaks in village security. What you done today could have been classified as SS rank if you were given the mission beforehand, instead of just completing it by happenstance. And if you still disagree, think about what would have happened should an enemy nation get a hold of that. A scroll which contains our most powerful weapons and techniques. It would lead to Konoha's downfall. He gave a moment of silence to let Naruto understand the depth of the situation. He had no doubt that Naruto understood perfectly but was just be humble. He started, unsure of himself. I guess you're right, he said finally. Looking at Naruto's almost dejected face made the Hokage laugh again. Any other genin or even chunin that got this sort of praise and mission completion would be bragging like a peacock boasting its feathers. But here Naruto was getting a little angry at the praise, feeling he was undeserving. Oh Naruto-kun, why can't the rest of my chunin and genin force be as humble as you are? He joked. My life would be so much easier. Hug sighed as he finally stopped laughing. Well, you'll get your mission equivalent pay directly to your bank account tomorrow. Wait, Naruto interrupted, making the Hokage raise an eyebrow. He wouldn't refuse the pay, surely? Could I ask for something instead of money, if that's all right with you? He asked. He took a moment to think about it, but not long. As long as his request was reasonable, he granted. It was all simple enough, really. Yes, as long as it is within reason, he said with a nod of his head. Thanks, Gigi. I would like a nature affinity paper, a book on all nature transformation stages and a book on shape transformation, and lastly, could I see the team selection sheets? Is that possible? I feel like I could start laughing again at any point, Hiruzen thought, since when does a genin even know those terms, let alone want to start practice them? May I ask, Naruto-kun? Why those? How did you even come by those terms? Well, you know I have a massive store of chakra? And that it stopped me from having the required control to perform a simple clone? Well, after I found out my problem was chakra control, I decided to start looking for more advanced chakra exercises and mastered them. Tree climbing, water walking, chakra levitation, but I was still unable to get the clone down. So, I looked into higher levels of chakra control and found that after chakra levitation it went into shape and nature transformation, which was only accessible by Chunin. But how did you get that information? He pressed. This level of information was not granted to genin, let alone academy students. Naruto seemed to hesitate, but decided to answer. I transformed into the image of a Chunin I had seen and went into the shinobi library. Sorry about doing that, I know it's illegal, but it's hard to get by when your teachers ignore you and try to repeatedly sabotage you, he said, sounding sincere. Bringing his hands to his head, he sighed tiredly. Once again, exemplary skills in infiltration to fool even the Chunin guarding that library, keen observational skills to know where to get your required materials, and excellent information gathering. Once again, you show great potential as an infiltration, information gathering and assassination specialist. Do not worry though, I forgive you. He should have realized that the academy was doing it, as is my job. He couldn't believe, or rather he didn't want to, that his own shinobi would disregard his own orders and purposefully sabotage someone, even for a Jinchuriki. After this he was going to have to fire everyone at the academy and restructure it, lessons and teachers. Because if someone of Naruto's skill couldn't pass just because of a clone, how many great shinobi had been lost to this system? That scared him the most. How much potential had he wasted? Yes, he answered, you may have what you asked for. Inu, he called and was instantly met by a masked Umbu. Go fetch those things Naruto-kun asked for, would you? Thanks, Gigi, Naruto said as Inu disappeared. Think nothing of it, it is your payment, Naruto-kun. Although, let me warn you why it is restricted to Chunin, or clan children. It requires a good understanding of how to mold chakra in different ways and to different parts of the body, which you have learned through your training already. That is not all though, because when using nature transformation, one wrong move with it, and you van die. Whether through burns from fire, losing a limb to wind, drowning yourself with water, frying your insides with lightning, or crushing yourself with earth, the elements will kill you with great ease should you make any mistake. So, take great care with every step, check, double check and triple check what you have learned before practicing, and then practice that one exercise until you have mastered it before moving on, okay? He stressed greatly. You may not know this, but 1/3 of the shinobi we lose a year is to the things you're about to practice, so take great care. What he said was true. Every year he lost nearly 300 Chunin or above to mistakes made during ninjutsu training, and all suffered horrible deaths from it. He really didn't want that to happen to Naruto for many reasons, but the foremost being that he was his grandson. Naruto nodded his head seriously. I understand, Gigi. Hiruzen sighed in relief. At least he could trust Naruto to be careful. I'll make my shadow clones do this stuff for me, so I'll never be in danger. There is that Oswell, he thought as he looked at Naruto. How could I have forgot the shadow clone's learning ability? Naruto is going to progress at an outstanding rate now. Yes, well, there is that option Oswell. Now, here's the other thing you asked for, he agreed as he handed over the team selection sheets. Normally, you wouldn't know this until team placement day, but I can make an exception. He didn't really know why Naruto wanted to know, but he knew that he had his reason seeing as how he had asked. Right now he would just wait and see what Naruto had to say. He didn't have to wait long. Who decided the teams, Gigi? He asked as he looked up from the sheet. He raised an eyebrow. The sensei requests the team they want, and I just okay it. Why? It seemed that he had a problem with the teams. He just hoped it wasn't something as small as him disliking Sakura and Sasuke. He thought better of Naruto than to be petty. Absolutely. Whoever Karina is, she's a greedy idealist in my opinion. He spat. The Hokage frowned. That wasn't what he expected at all. It wasn't even his team. You might want to explain that one, Naruto-kun. She has asked for a team that has a lot of potential as a tracker team, he replied, clearly wanting to know what this was about. Well, for starters, why are you training them as a tracker team? In my opinion, all three should be split up among teams 7, 8, and 10 as they are the only teams that will pass. I say this because each team needs someone who can detect enemies. It could save lives. Whereas, if they're all kept on one team, the other two may suffer from ambushes and lose a team member. Furthermore, if they are all together, they will grow complacent. They'll always think, oh, it doesn't matter what I do, the others are here to help find any potential threats. So I don't need to do anything. Gradually they will all think that and start to let their skills diminish, and it will one day cost them. Whereas if they are not together, they will constantly be on the alert, constantly better their skills because they know their team relies on them. And lastly, where is the long-range fighter? Yes, Hinata is a strong taijutsu user, but she would be able to handle someone who kept her at a distance. Shino's bugs are easy to keep at a distance with a simple fire, water or wind jutsu, so he's only effective at traps. And lastly there is Kiba, a short to mid-range fighter who could only use Katsuga a few times before he starts to suffer from chakra exhaustion. Whereas, put Sasuke, Shikamaru or Ino on their team, preferably Ino, and your problem is sorted. Kurenai focuses too much on the potential of the team as trackers, and nothing else. I also failed to see what she can teach a team of ninjutsu, taijutsu and nin taijutsu specialists. From her stat book she is mediocre at taijutsu and ninjutsu, but has great skill in genjutsu, which none of her team are suited for. It's a mismatched team. He laid the papers back down. And don't get me started on the others. Team 10 is preposterous. The recreation of the Ino Shikacho trio, good in theory, but crap in reality. I know your son's aiming for a repeat of their parents because they'll already have a large list of team jutsu they can use thanks to the previous generation, but that's its weakness. Everyone, especially the other nations, have memorized that team's techniques. Their predictability will get them killed off the bat. They would be better suited joining different teams and learning how to actually work with others and create new tactics, rather than mooching off of their parents' work. They all have the potential, but they'll never reach it if they don't have to do anything for it. And then there is Team 7. Sasuke Uchiha and Kakashi Hatake. That is the real team. If they were on a team, we both know that Hatake would be asked by the council to focus on Uchiha. They all love their magazine Uchiha, and would love it even more if he was as good at ninjutsu as the fabled copy ninja. Me and Sakura would be ignored. Furthermore, Sasuke hasn't even attained the Sharingan. So, Hatake shouldn't be his sensei until he has unlocked it, and when he has, he should take Sasuke on as a personnel apprentice so that others won't get ignored. The team sensei should be filled with a capable and well-rounded Jonin who won't play favorite in the meantime, as Hatake would because he could pass all his techniques on to him, especially the fabled Chidori. And lastly, Sakura, like Ino, should not be placed on Sasuke's team. She would neglect her on training, instead choosing to focus on Sasuke and beg him for a date. It would be better if she was actually ordered to stay away from him for several months, so that she could focus on becoming more of a shinobi. 1 minute. It took him less than a minute to pick apart 3 teams that seemed to have a large potential, greater than any from the last generation. I may have not praised him enough earlier. He's a genius. Hiruzen had absolutely no idea what to even reply to that. It was a splendid evaluation that even his Jonin didn't see. He cleared his throat. And would you be able to think of a better team placement? By any chance, he asked, trying not to sound as he was. It didn't work. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the question before picking up the sheet again. Just for teams 7, 8 and 10, or the ones that will fail as well? He asked. Just the 3 ones you think will pass. It took Naruto another minute to put the sheet down, obviously finishing his decision. Done. Hiruzen nodded his head for Naruto to carry on. A lot depended on his next answer. He could tell even the Umbu were paying a lot of attention to the situation now, as even they were intrigued. Kurenai Yuhi should have Hinata Hyuga, Shikamaru Nara and Sakura Haruno. The reasons are simple for each person. Hinata Hyuga. Hinata has told me from past conversations that she is regularly tutored by Kurenai Yuhi by orders of her father, meaning she will already be in her comfort zone with her, and won't feel like backing down all the time due to her poor self-confidence. Furthermore, she will be the only person who can take trained enemies on in hand-to-hand combat, meaning she will usually be relied on to hold the enemy off for the others to trap, incapacitate, or kill them. This will gradually break her out of her habit to feel weak and useless, as she is constantly relied on to do things the others can, building her confidence up. And lastly, either Sakura nor Shikamaru have personalities that will overbear on her, making her clam up like usual. Sakura is only violent with males, so will not shout at Hinata. Shikamaru is too lazy to do anything. And Kurenai is like a mother to the girl. All of this allows her to be herself, whereas people like Kiba would be too loud and would make her clam up. Shikamaru Nara. Shikamaru will work in the same sort of way that he would within the Ino Shikacho trio. He will create plans, like all Nara, use Hinata as a diversion similar to Choji, and trap his opponents. He will be able to use his dad's old tactics, but will have to think for himself on how to apply them with this new team. Furthermore, it is known that all Nara are lazy, Shikamaru especially so, but it is also known that they can't stand arguing women, and will do anything to get them off their case. So, knowing this, I have placed him on a team with all women. Sakura especially will get Shikamaru off of his arse, and start doing things properly. Also, he will have no sympathizers as it is an all-female team, and all women stick together. He will be forced to reach his full potential or listen to nagging women. He will choose option A, I presume. Lastly, Sakura Haruno. Sakura is a poor excuse for shinobi, plain and simple. She sticks out like a sore thumb with that red dress and pink hair. She's as silent as Akamichi singing opera. Her taijutsu is perfectly copied and memorized from the academy, but she has no strength to back it up due to some diet or another. She has decent speed, but makes as much noise as a flat-footed rhino when she does. Her jutsu are perfect and she wastes absolutely no chakra, perfect chakra control, but that is due to her non-existent reserves. I bet newborn babies have larger pools than her. She won't listen to anyone unless they're Sasuke. I plan to fix that with this team. When she sees Hinata's speed, reflex, chakra control, capacity, taijutsu, stealth and other abilities, Sakura will start to see that she is lacking. Although, this will be ignored as Sakura will see Hinata's lack of confidence as weakness and will automatically claim to be better due to her exam results. Thus, Hinata will not make her improve on her own. But when you add Kurenai to the mix, the epitome of kunoichi, Sakura will see her failings again. But this time, she will not see any weakness. She will see Kurenai as an idol, something she wishes to become. Especially after Sakura sees her sex appeal, something she tries to flaunt to Sasuke all the time. Under Kurenai she will snap out of her fangirl phase and step into the shoes of a proper shinobi. Lastly, she will also be able to learn a great deal from her sensei as she has near-perfect chakra control, making her a potential genjutsu master. Much like Kurenai herself, using her genjutsu will make for the perfect support among this team, as Hinata will keep opponents occupied. She will put them under a genjutsu and Shikamaru can then easily capture with his shadow. Kurenai Yuhi will no longer be a poor choice for sensei, as she will help all her students in various ways, and gain a protege in Sakura. This will also be good for Konoha as we have very little genjutsu users. Hinata, Sakura and Shikamaru will continue to fix each other's faults, and grow stronger therefore. Now that team is done, let's move on to the new team under Kakashi Hatake. If we must keep him, Kakashi Hatake, Shino Aburame, Sasuke Uchiha and Choji Akamichi. Sasuke Uchiha. Sasuke will be a very good student for Kakashi, as both rely on the same style of fighting. Both focus on ninjutsu but with a strong grounding in taijutsu should they need it. Essentially, Sasuke will be Kakashi's protege. Also, seeing as neither of his teammates are annoying and loud or like to speak up such as Ino and Sakura, Sasuke will have to be the leader and take charge of situations, forcing him to communicate with his teammates. This will eventually lead to the point where he is more comfortable speaking around each other, and when I can stop adding new meaning to the sound HN I think it has 62, at the moment. He would really be acting as the all-ranges support, but mainly filling the team's gap as long-range specialist. Next, we have Choji Akamichi. Now, Choji has very little weaknesses, and just as few strengths. He's a good all-rounder and team player, but he's more of a follower than a leader. Just like all Akamichi, he's a point at the target and let him mow them down. He will mainly be playing close-range specialist, allowing time for Shino to suck his enemy's chakra dry while Sasuke tries burning them to a crisp with that fire jutsu he knows, smug bastard. Kakashi will be good for Choji though, as he is very slow, and I've heard Kakashi is an extremely fast shinobi. Lastly, there is Shino Aburame. With all Aburame, he is very well-rounded but relies mainly on his Kikeichu. Kakashi will be good here as he will be able to teach him some basic elemental techniques to cover his weakness, as Kikeichu are weak against relatively all ninjutsu. Shino will also be very good for supplying a logical basis for the team, and also show his very keen tactical mind. With these two together he will be the planner and thinker of the team, but will also act as the person that will calm Sasuke's quick temper with his cold logic. A perfect match. There is also the fact that he doesn't like to get up close and personal, thinking that his logic and Kikeichu will be enough. Kakashi will be good for this again, as he is known for being able to mix his taijutsu and ninjutsu, and his excellent mind to catch his enemies in predicaments they are unable to get out of. All of this team, though, is reliant on the fact of whether or not Kakashi will neglect the others. If he splits his time equally, the team should grow to be very strong, Sasuke and Shino in particular, and will be very well-rounded, making it extremely hard for them to be beaten as they have next to no weaknesses. And finally, that leaves the last team, my team. Under Asuma Sarutobi is Naruto Uzumaki, Ino Yamanaka and Kiba Inuzuka. Kiba is like most Inuzuka and won't change in that regard. He is loud, arrogant, has a large ego and boasts as if his life depends on it. But he has reason to boast. He is the second fastest genin graduate by far. He is the second best taijutsu practitioner. His unique nintaijutsu that his clan uses only boosts his speed, strength, and overall taijutsu. He makes the perfect mid to short ranger. His faults, though, will be quickly discouraged by Ino. Seeing as Kiba is used to, by pack terms, being dominated by strong female characters, his mother and sister, he will quickly fall into line behind Ino. As such, he will be less likely to charge in recklessly. Furthermore, your son will add to that by mellowing Kiba out, as he is allegedly a very chilled and calm person. Lastly, he will be helped quite avidly by Asuma, as he is one of Konoha's best nin taijutsu users, if not the best. He could show Kiba how and when to strike, how to use both his appendages at the same time to maximum effect, and will only continue to help his growth physically as Asuma is the second most physical jounin after Meito Guy. Next is Ino Yamanaka. I believe she is very talented at the moment, but she is very like Sakura in terms of her physical development due to dieting, and mentally due to her fangirlish tendencies. But unlike Sakura, her father has mostly sorted that problem out in terms of her stealth, throwing skills, and from what I hear, skills in herbs, poisonous and medical. For this reason, I believe she will work best with the group as support, using poison weapons, her Yamanaka techniques and the possibility of her being a medic Nin due to her great chakra control and good reserves. Asuma should be able to help her out of her infatuation with Sasuke now that she no longer sees him, and also make great leaps in her physical development. He should be able to give her a suitable taijutsu foundation, and be able to increase her speed and strength greatly with heavy training and a balanced diet. And finally, me, Naruto Uzumaki, I focus on close-range combat, but would also like to be skilled in ninjutsu and chakra flow with weapons, much like Asuma. I am the best of the genin in terms of speed taijutsu, tied with Sasuke Uchiha in ninjutsu now, poor at genjutsu, most tactically skilled other than Shikamaru, stealthiest and best at academics, as proved with the way I got 100% on my tests. I would be able to lead Kiba in the right direction and show him to use his brain more, rather than his voice. I will be a good distraction from Sasuke for Ino in the fact that I'll make myself a target for her to surpass, and will be able to further her taijutsu skill by constant sparring with my shadow clones. I reckon I could make a good leader for them both out in the field, as well, as neither of them have the capabilities to lead or plan. With Asuma I think I could proficiently learn to use my sword with chakra flow under his guidance, further my taijutsu and vastly increase my ninjutsu. These skills with Asuma's help and my large chakra reserves could make me a taijutsu, kenjutsu and ninjutsu powerhouse. This team, much like Kurenai's, will rely mainly on in-team and sensei comradeship. It will require us all to work together and play of each other, but with each other's personality it should be rather easy. The room fell silent straight away, the silence almost deafening as Naruto stopped. Hiruzen could not find it in himself to speak. Here he sat, in front of a newly minted genin, and he just listened to him single-handedly pull apart the most promising generation in years, and then reconstruct one much better within 5 minutes. Teams that Jonin across Konoha looked at and saw the raw potential, replaced with one much better that only a genin saw. Never in all his years had Hiruzen something so startling. Naruto Hiruzen started, his voice sounding dry from lack of use. Could you wait outside, please? I will only be a minute. Naruto nodded. Very well, Gigi, he said as he left, shutting the door behind him. The room was silent again, until Hiruzen spoke. Umbu, his 3 guards instantly appeared in front of him without a sound. Tell me what you think. Can he join? Umbu Yugao asked instantly, her purple hair falling down behind her cat mask. Hiruzen chuckled. That was not what I asked, and you know that recruitment within Umbu is your job, so if you want you can, but just wait for a few months so that he can settle in with his team. Now, answer my question. He replied. This time Tenzo, the only Mokuton user in the world and student of Kakashi Hatake, stepped forward. Amazing. He shows great skill in espionage, these being stealth, infiltration, evasion, spying, information gathering and even the possibility of assassination. With all these he shows great potential as a spy master, infiltration master, information gathering master, and assassination master. Furthermore, he shows keen knowledge of basic tactics. When building the teams he took into consideration the enemy's knowledge on the situation and turned it against them, showed the understanding of tactical positioning and ambushing in his ambush of Mizuki. The location was dark due to foliage and lots of shrubbery to hide ninja behind, is able to put various pieces of information together quickly as shown by his team building, and is logical and calm, never letting his personal feelings get in the way of his decisions. He went on to show very good leadership qualities. He structured the teams around not only their physical and rumored capabilities and their clan jutsu, but also by their personal and psychological thought processes, using their emotions as tools as much as their jutsu would be. Not only did he use their strengths, but he also correctly stated their weakness and how to fix them. Even among Jonin such as Kakashi Hatake and Kurenai Yuhi, some of our elite ninja picked apart all the same. He showed that he took the time to look up all of his possible sensei and teammates so that he would already know all weaknesses and strengths beforehand, showing the temperament of a leader who needs to know every aspect of his team. Lastly, with his fighting capabilities he showed a great deal as well, showing he is not only limited to cognitive abilities. He showed his massive reservoir of chakra with his shadow clones, excellent control for a Jinchuriki or good for a normal person. He showed the willing to learn more in his free time and not just limiting it to the allotted time by the academy. His records show excellent speed and strength, and now he is even choosing a specialization in taijutsu, kenjutsu and ninjutsu as a close-range expert. All in all, sir, I believe Jonin isn't his rank. I say he is a solid chunin, by any and all tests. Tenzo finished by standing back in line with the other 2 Umbu. I can't find any fault in Tenzo's grading, he is most certainly a chunin in all but name, but how do I make him chunin without the council throwing a tantrum? He could just make Naruto chunin, but the council would demand that he revoke for weeks on end. He wouldn't, but it would be annoying as hell. He could try to do it in secret, but the council would still find out. Sir Ginma asked as he stood forward, his hawk mask gleaming in the light. Why not use the chunin probation system set up during the Second Shinobi War? That should stop the council from getting on your back. He moved back in line with the others as he finished. Sometimes I hate it when you know what I'm thinking, Hiruzen remarked dryly, but then grinned widely. But it's times like these I feel like I could kiss you. Please don't, sir. I'm sure Yugao wouldn't mind. Elganma tried not to double over as Yugao removed her elbow from his stomach, as difficult as that was. Chuckling at the antics of his personal Anbu guard, Squad 0, Hiruzen waved them away as they returned to their hiding. He then got up and walked to the door to let Naruto back in. Come back in, he said as he walked back to his seat. Naruto followed shortly behind. Naruto, due to your astounding potential and excellent skills shown today, I am enacting something called Chunin probation and changing the teams to what you have suggested. Now what this means is that I'm making you a Chunin, but you are on probation. Furthermore, unlike most Chunin, you will be staying with Jonin sensei until he says that you have enough experience to start working with others. This hasn't really been used since wartime, as it was used to get more Chunin out in the field, but with the protection of a Jonin. He will judge you on each and every mission, and should he find you lacking, you will lose your rank and be demoted back to Genin. So, in other words, you're a Chunin with a Jonin sensei, and now the council can't shout in my ear all day long as they will expect you to fail. Understand? Hiruzen asked. He didn't really need to ask. He knew that Naruto understood perfectly. He knew that Naruto had already found out about the Kyuubi and had stopped footing around the situation a year ago, and now he knew that Naruto understood how the council treated every matter to do with him. Naruto seemed far too intelligent for his own good at times, but at others it was a blessing. Especially now, as he knew he wouldn't have to be the one to break that news to him, or rather he didn't have to in the past. Naruto would just take this as he always took everything. He would nod his head, say he understood, deny the invitation to a meal and go let off steam somewhere else. He watched as Naruto nodded his head in understanding. I understand, Gigi. Is that all? He asked. No. Would you like to go get a meal tomorrow? He asked, once again already knowing the answer. No, thank you for the invite though, Gigi. See you later. Gigi. Naruto stood up to leave, but stopped when he caught the headband and green Chunin flak vest. He instantly put the headband around his forehead, but did not put the vest on. Instead, he seemed to be looking at it in disdain. Gigi, can I have one of the thin gray ones? These green ones are too thick and heavy, they impede my movements and speed, which isn't good seeing how I focus on flexibility and speed in my taijutsu style, he asked. Hiruzen chuckled to himself again. Naruto always had something to say, some logical remark, or some way of bettering himself. Most would have smiled like a fool at receiving the standard flak vest and went home, not realizing they could have had one more designed to stealth and maneuverability. But not Naruto. He quickly unsealed one that he kept in his desk and threw it to Naruto, who caught it and threw the other back, which was promptly sealed away. This new flak was like the Anbu standard flak vest. It was dark gray and sleeveless, very thin and flexible with small metal planes on the inside to deflect whatever damage it could. It also didn't have the neck guard which annoyed so many ninja. Thanks, Gigi. See ya. And with that he was already out the door. For a few minutes Hiruzen sat in silence, letting the events of tonight just roll over him. He realized that Naruto knew what he was stealing tonight and that Mizuki was a traitor, but he still took the scroll. He knew why though. It was because Naruto didn't think that he, the Hokage, would trust him over a Chunin sensei. It had hurt when he realized that, but he also saw the logic in Naruto's plan. Instead of telling him about Mizuki and having him launch an investigation into him, where Mizuki would instantly clam up and destroy any evidence, in which case the villagers would all join his side to spite Naruto, he decided to catch Mizuki red-handed and learn a technique that would allow him to pass the exam all in one go. Genius, really, the way he manipulated an unfavorable situation into one where he gained a new technique, weapon and promotion. All the more reason he deserved to be a Chunin as well. That's another thing that bothered him though. He remembered that sword, or rather swords. They were Kushina's before she died. He had them sealed straight away as he knew that anyone who wasn't a main house Uzumaki would be killed by the swords, and had added that in their description. This meant that Naruto now knew about his clan, and that he was most likely its heir. So many problems he now had to face: the council, Danzo's schemes, Naruto's cunningness, Orochimaru's activities as well as Akatsuki's, and the rumors from Jiraiya's spies of Suna preparing for war. The last was the worst, because if Suna went to war it could very well start the Fourth Great Shinobi War. That was something he definitely didn't want to see. He had already been in 3 of the wretched things already. Oh, how he wished he could just retire and pawn the job off to someone else. But again, he couldn't. His 2 students would lead Konoha to ruin, especially Jiraiya. Hokage-sama, I brought the items you requested, Ina said as he appeared. It appears I'm late again. Hiruzen sighed as he heard the rest of his Anbu laugh at Kakashi's tardiness. Some people will never learn. Just leave it here. I'll take it to Naruto in the morning, he replied tiredly. Very well, Hokage-sama, Kakashi said as he dropped them all onto the desk. The Hokage watched as his guard returned to duty. What would he do tomorrow? What would he tell Naruto about his clan? Most importantly, what would he do when the chakra affinity papers showed Naruto he had a Kekkai Genkai? Hiruzen was tired, very tired. He had started to feel this tiredness the night his successor had died along with his wife, and Hiruzen's own wife. He had to take up his office again, Danzo had plotted again, the council had caused trouble again, and Naruto continued to get older and wiser, causing trouble for his weary mind again and again. Looking at the calendar he realized tomorrow marked the 3-year mark since his eldest son's and daughter-in-law's death, It would be a sad day for him, Asuma and Konohamaru. Asuma would most likely pick tomorrow to start off another argument over nothing. Why could he not just see things the same way as his father? He realized then just how tired he was, oh, so very tired. Tired with life, with the day-to-day mundane exist he now called life. But he would get up in the morning and carry on to do his duty for the village he loved. Oh, how wished for a rest, just to give in to the subtle darkness of his eternal sleep, to end this, the tiring existence of life. Duty is heavier than a mountain, death is lighter than a feather. Asuma Sarutobi took a long drag on his cigarette before exhaling, a cloud of smoke coming from his lips. The woman sat across from him coughed, and waved the smoke out of her face. God damn it, Asuma! Stop chain smoking, or I swear I'll castrate you, she growled angrily. Ma Kurenai. You shouldn't be too harsh on him. After all, it is his coping mechanism, a masked man chided from behind his book. I don't think that matters, Kakashi. Especially when my lungs can't cope with his coping mechanism, she growled out again, seemingly more irritated by the masked man than the smoke. Kakashi lowered his book slightly and looked Kurenai in the eye, her red orbs glowering back at him. They worked perfectly fine last night when you used them to scream Asuma's name to the high heavens, he replied drolly. Asuma chalked on his fag. Kurenai just looked like a tomato, her face matching the red of her eyes. He coughed, not yet clearing his lungs. Didn't have sex, Kakashi. I never mentioned anything of the kind. Maybe you have a guilty conscience? Care to share a few details with an old friend? He asked. The small book seemingly disappeared as he leaned over the table in apt interest. Kurenai finally recovered though. Smacking him upside the head, she glowered at him. Mark my words, you tell anyone and I will castrate you. Do you under? A masked Umbu appeared, interrupting the conversation. The Hokage would like to meet you at his office in 1 hour, he supplied before vanishing in a swirl of leaves. Frowning, Asuma rubbed his beard. I wonder what he wants? He asked what they were all thinking. URG's stupid alarm. Naruto groaned as he rolled out of bed. His hand deftly flicked the off button without him even looking in its direction. Rubbing the hazy sight from his eyes, Naruto stood with a yawn. He had returned home at about 3 in the morning last night, and spent another hour transferring all the techniques from shadow clone paper to real paper so that it would not disappear. Afterwards he had managed to get to sleep easily enough, but only for 3 hours it seemed. Damn training regimen, what idiot decided to get up at 5? He moaned as he walked towards the shower. He realized, through his tiredness, that a stray part of his mind answered you did, but he promptly ignored it. After a cold shower courtesy of the vindictive landlord, Naruto went through his usual routine. Firstly he had his breakfast and fruit smoothie, then he done some light stretches to loosen his body in case of someone attacking him, and finally he moved on to getting dressed. He made sure to put his training weights back on under his sleeves and trousers, and added some chakra to them to increase their weight. The thing that had been most beneficial to his training was those weights. After years of use they had greatly increased his speed and strength. The weights were mainly there to increase his speed, as his entire taijutsu style relied on quick, precise strikes instead of slow-moving haymakers. Everything he had done for years was like this, meant to optimize his capabilities in or out of battle. He walked over to a loose floor panel and opened it up. Within this little alcove was his wallet, Gamachan, a small little green frog. He took the frog out and put it aside. Afterwards he lifted up the second panel to reveal Itachi's sealing scroll. He took that out, unsealed the scrolls within and picked the ones he wanted. His keen eyes fell onto one document though, not a scroll. It was the only thing he had stolen that wasn't part of the forbidden scroll, or rather he had copied the original. It was the answer to a question he had wanted answered for a long while, and something he would kill to find out. It was the focal point of which his world changed, and his savior was born. Now was not the time for those answers though. Now, it was time for preparation of his impending departure from Konoha. He would find out another truth to another lie at a later time. Whether he opened it tonight, tomorrow or next year, he didn't know. He just knew he now had the answer with him. It was enough. It was quickly stowed away, the remaining scrolls were quickly resealed and the original scroll stored away again, the second panel covering it up, Gamachan on top, and then the original floorboard put back in place. Most people would see that as a little cubbyhole for his money so that thieves couldn't get his money when they broke in, which was a regular occurrence for him. In reality it was the smokescreen for the jutsu he had just stolen from the forbidden scroll. Most shinobi would just see his wallet and call it shinobi paranoia, and not bother to check underneath the underneath. It was basic misdirection. Walking over to the table he placed the scrolls down and sat down himself, preparing to read them. The first was Kage Bunshin Daibakuha, Shadow Clone Explosion. The technique required you to create a shadow clone, but this time you needed to add 2 elements to it, fire and wind. The process this time was the same as creating the shadow clone, but instead of letting all the loose chakra within the clone just float around, you store it within a container within the clone. This canister holds all the chakra that wasn't used for the creation of the body, and acts as the energy for the explosion. Next of all you need to create 2 other containers besides the chakra one. These will hold small amounts of fire nature chakra and the other hold wind nature chakra. When you want the clone to go boom, you simply mix all 3 containers. When all 3 containers meet, the reaction is similar to that of a chemical reaction. First, the extremely hot flame and the pure chakra meet, where the magic happens. Due to pure chakra having so much energy, the flame simply doesn't have enough room or time to grow. The flame will expand rapidly within the clone until it reaches the walls of the clone's body. The flame will continue to build up and grow in pressure until, finally, the wind and fire meet, instantly fueling the fire and intensifying the flame greatly. Soon, the clone's body can no longer contain it and lets it all out in one big piece of explosive art all over the enemies. Naruto chuckled ruefully at the idea of blowing people to pieces in a glorious mess of flames, idly noting he may have just developed pyromania. This also seemed very easy, especially since drawing out wind chakra came so naturally to him. He thought he had a wind affinity. But when he thought about it, that would make fire his opposing element, and hardest to draw upon. This might take a little while. He was about to send some clones off to experiment with it, but he suddenly heard a knock at the door. Stowing the scroll for the glorious jutsu he would come to love away in a coffee jar, he went to answer the door. "Ah, Naruto-kun. You are in, it seems." Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Sandaime Hokage, greeted as he stepped through the doorway. The sun shone in through the doorway, glancing out over the Hokage's shoulder, like spearing lances aiming at him. A spotlight held over his head as he was questioned for the truth. Almost instantly, Naruto was prepared to run. What possible reason could the Hokage have for visiting him the morning after his crime? He might have been caught and the old man was here to take him in, and no, he was just overthinking it. The old man visited regularly, and why not today, old man? "What are you doing here?" he asked nervously as he let the elderly man in. Shutting the door, Naruto ushered him over to the table and to take a seat. He noticed the old Kage take a look around the room like always. He noted anything new, old or damaged. Everything would have looked the same as last time though, with very little changes. His front door opened up to a living room painted in light colors to maximize the brightness of the room. There was a sofa in the middle of the room, a coffee table in front of that, and a television a few feet in front of that. Off to the sides were some bookshelves covered in a plethora of books that ranged on any and all subjects. Conjoining to his basic living room was his kitchen, full with the basic cupboards and kitchen sides, an oven, a toaster, kettle and other small, various kitchen utensils. It was all cheap and basic. He didn't like to waste money, and the thieves/assassins/vandals liked to destroy anything of worth. After making sure that Naruto appeared to have at least the basic requirements, and hadn't been robbed lately, the Hokage placed a few items on the table, making Naruto realize why he was here. "You forgot these yesterday, Naruto-kun. I thought it would be best to bring them to you," he said with a grandfatherly chuckle. "Good, he's just here to drop these things off. Best not to let my guard down, though," Naruto thought calculatingly. He wouldn't allow himself to drop his guard and get caught now, when he was so close to his dreams, so close to freedom. His attention switched to the book on elemental manipulation for all elements. This book with specific guides on each element was correlated with Konoha's knowledge on every aspect on how to control each element, and could only be bought from one sanctioned shop that was restricted to Jonin level only. Furthermore, this book cost a small fortune, enough to buy a mansion at the least. He was lucky the pay he would have received was going to be S rank. Smiling, he realized he had found his solution to his exploding clone problem. He could just have his clones practice basic fire manipulation. This was very good indeed, as he could also use this to master his elements when he escaped Konoha, because all knowledge like elemental manipulation was restricted to the hidden villages and he wasn't likely to stumble across it in his travels. "Wonderful. Here's the chakra paper. I suppose you already know how to use it?" "Yes," Naruto replied curtly as he accepted the small piece of paper. Examining the piece of paper, Naruto observed that it looked like an absolutely normal piece of paper used in everyday households. He quickly dismissed that as soon as it touched his skin. The moment he made contact with it, the chakra within him seemed to come alive, brimming at the edges of his skin as though it was drawn to the paper. He relented to its demand, letting his life energy flow into it. What happened next was both surprising and predictable. Firstly, the paper crumpled, surprising Naruto. That wasn't the affinity he thought he had. Then it split into two pieces showing his nature affinity as wind, predictable. Then, the pieces both burned to ash. He also had a fire affinity, shocking. So he had been right in his earlier assumptions, only wrong as well. He idly noted that the fire for his exploding clone might no be too hard to create after all. What just happened? How can I have 3 affinities already? He asked, positively dumbfounded as he looked to the old man for advice. Even if he no longer trusted the man, he respected his wisdom and knowledge gained after decades of war. "Your father had 2 affinities. Lightning and wind, the rarest 2 nature types for Konoha. Seeing as they were both extremely strong affinities, he passed both on to you instead of 1. Although, I bet it most likely has to do with the QB enhancing your chakra network faster than most, allowing for 3 instead of 1. That, and the QB's affinities are recorded to be wind and fire, so you must have also attained them through him," the Hokage supplied, not flustered in the slightest. This told Naruto that the old man definitely knew his parents, and well, if he knew one of their affinities, he was absolutely going to use this opportunity to get every piece of info on them that he could, and then recompense from the old man. Once a hustler, always a hustler. He would milk this situation for all that it was worth. He would need everything he could get soon. "Tell me about them," Naruto demanded, not bothering to ask. He knew this was the real reason the old man was here the moment he mentioned them. Tell me about my parents. That is why I am here today, Naruto-kun. Especially to tell you about your clan relations. I'll start with your name, Uzumaki, the name of the clan that ruled Uchiha. He saw the old man raise an eyebrow at him, but he knew that the Hokage had figured out he knew about them already, or he wouldn't have been here. He started to speak. First off, I'll tell you what your clansmen looked like. He took a moment to compose himself. They were all generally tall, strong people with red, orange, or white hair. You're the first I've known that is blonde. They were fair-skinned and usually had round faces and purple or violet eyes. As he stopped for a moment, he closed his eyes and smiled deeply. He was probably reminiscing, meaning he knew them on a more personal level. From that he gained the understanding that his Uzumaki parent didn't show in him at all, except from the slight roundness of his face. This meant that his other parent had bright blonde hair and cerulean eyes. That also meant that his other parent was most likely a Yamanaka, Senju or Namikaze, as no other family, or even civilians, had blonde hair or deep blue eyes. Although, he could be wrong. Moving on, let's talk about their fighting style, or capabilities if you will. In battle, and out of battle for that matter, the Uzumaki were most cunning and intelligent people. Their logic was calm, cool and always precise. Their strategies always had backup plans, and even backup plans. When they were plotting and planning, it was a terrifying thing to be on the receiving end of. I should know, one of them pranked me on a regular basis. He smiled even deeper, but with a sad tinge to it. He knew an Uzumaki very well, and was quite close if he let said person get away with pranking him, the Hokage. Probably his parent. That would explain why the Hokage was so close to him. He would have to ask. Only the Naruto of Konoha could match their analytical and masterfully strategic minds. I remember watching a game of shogi between the clan heads of each clan. It was one of the most amazing spectacles I had ever seen, a beautiful game of art to any general who watched. You are starting to show signs of their intellect. The Uzumaki were also known for using their brilliant minds to create the world's greatest and strongest seals, gaining them the unchallenged title of greatest Fuinjutsu masters of all time. For instance, they had seals that could cast large-scale genjutsu, something they did so that people couldn't find Uchiha, seals that brought statues to life, fired high-level ninjutsu, absorbed the chakra out of ninjutsu, made weapons come to life and shape-shifting ones as well. They were so famous with seals that Kirigakure no Sato asked them to make several blades for them with special seals on them. All 5 are now commonly known as swords of Kiri's legendary 7 swords. The seals giving each blade unique abilities and even managing to make one fully sentient. That doesn't even begin to describe how they were in battle, though. To further add to their great abilities, they all had Jonin to Kage and higher chakra reserves by the time they were 16. They often used these large reserves to cast high-level ninjutsu of all kinds, but they mostly focused on water, wind and lightning releases. Their techniques often varied into the A and S rank as they had more than enough chakra to do so. People greatly feared them for this. Unfortunately, though, their strength and fearsome power was their downfall. Naruto saw the old Kage's saddened face tinged with guilt. He obviously was a part of their downfall and felt guilty for it. It was saddening to know his clan was dead, but he expected as much, seeing as he had memorized every living clan, bloodline and village for when he defected and had no recollection of an Uzumaki clan, although he had come across the name Uchiha no Sato. Although it was sad, he moved on quickly. The way he saw it, nothing had changed whatsoever. He was still parentless, hated by his own village, and planning treason. What did it matter that he had ancestors who had been dead for years? Didn't everyone? It would be best if he just cut the mopey crap and to get over it, or it would have a negative effect on his escape. Noticing the Hokage's silence, Naruto decided to get things moving again. What happened to them? He asked solemnly. It was best to keep up appearances. He didn't want to come across as though he didn't care. The Hokage sighed tiredly. They were wiped out during the Second Great Shinobi War. Kumo, Iwa and Kiri used a surprise attack on Uchiha. We would have sent help, but Iwa and Kumo sent a large force to our northwestern and northeastern front. Our forces were spread too thin to send aid. If we did, Iwa and Kumo would have gained some of Fire Country's land. I'm sorry, Naruto. It's alright, Gigi, you only fucking left them to die. I forgive you. Of course it isn't alright, you jacked up bastard. You should stop smoking that leaf. It's addling your wits, fool. He thought angrily. Naruto knew exactly why they didn't send troops. It was because they didn't want to lose any of their own men to save someone else. They couldn't be asked to lose a small amount of land to Kumo and Iwa out of a stupid sense of pride, because they had never lost any ground before and didn't want to start then, even to save allies. A village who promoted comradeship but left their friends to die just to save their own pride, the hypocrites. He could already draw up a basic rescue attempt, one that would even allow Konoha to keep their land and gain more. All they had to do was send word to Suna, their allies, to attack Iwa's western borders. Suna would break through the weak line as Iwa had drawn troops to 2 different fronts. When the attacking troops got word of Suna breaking through their defenses, they would have to retreat to bolster their home guard. Whilst those troops were trying to re-enter their land, they could be caught in a hammer and anvil strike between the attacking Suna troops and Konoha from behind. those troops would be destroyed from two sides, allowing Konoha and Suna to gain ground in the land of Earth. Then, with that side of Konoha's defenses relieved, they would be able to send troops from there to help quickly fend off the Kumo force in the east. Kumo's forces could only be 1/3 of their army at tops, and that was against 2/3 of Konoha's. It would have been a crushing victory for Konoha, especially as they had the advantages of home ground, terrain, being on the defensive and larger numbers. From there, all Konoha had to do was repeat the plan with what had happened with Iwa. They would send half their troops to strike Kumo's forces from behind and crush them between themselves and Uzumaki defenses. Yuzu would have held out longer because Iwa would have had to pull out of the fight before it even began, and so would still be standing. The combined forces of Yuzu and Konoha could then have focused on repelling the remaining force of Kiri. With the defenses of Yuzu and combined forces of Yuzu and Konoha, it would have made a near impenetrable defense. Eventually Kiri would have pulled out due to losses and a loss of their support from Kumo and Iwa. Yuzu could have been saved, he knew that, and yet Konoha had left them to rot. If he wasn't sure beforehand, he was positive now. Konoha was a place full of liars, vindictive fools and traitors. He had no place here anymore, if he ever had. It's not like you could have done anything else. You tried your best, he said with a small smile. He'd get them later though. Now was the time to prepare. The future was for vengeance. The Hokage sighed. His shoulders seemed to sag in relief. You have no idea how good it was to hear you say that. I couldn't bear it if you blamed me, he admitted. Yeah, only because you didn't want me going QB on you and tearing Konoha a new arsehole, he thought sardonically. I have a question or two, he started, his voice breaking the silence. At the nod of the Hokage's head he continued, I have no foundations with my clan's specialization. My skill with it is non-existent. I find that to be unforgivable, to not have any talent for something my ancestors spent centuries of blood, sweat and tears to gain its formidable reputation for. So, would you be able to help me find something to teach me the art of Fuinjutsu? I would like to make people remember why they feared the name Uzumaki when used in context with the word Fuinjutsu. And also, do you have any clan techniques that I could learn? The Hokage chuckled slightly at that, his mood lifting. You would be surprised by how terrified people were of your clan. 3 of the great nations feared them so much that they banded together just to destroy them. I think I can do as you asked for the Fuinjutsu. Naruto smiled as 2 scrolls were thrown onto the table. I had a feeling you would ask the questions you did, so I had these prepared. In one scroll is several books that will teach you Fuinjutsu from beginner, level 1, to master, level 12, I, myself, am level 13, which is... Wait, Naruto interrupted, his brows furrowed in confusion. What do you mean 13? You just said it only reaches level 12, he asked, for a moment thinking that the Hokage was well in need of retirement. Naruto almost growled in anger when the old man started chuckling as if he had said something stupid. Naruto, I said your clan was the greatest to ever exist. Do you think the best of the best only measure themselves by the same standards as others? He asked as he chuckled harder. Your clan was so much better that they went up to level 20. The things they could do with seals at level 20 made level 12 masters, the masters of all the great nations, look like children playing with crayons. Konoha, and the other villages, only have the knowledge to reach level 12. But if you were lucky enough to know in Uzumaki, they would sometimes teach you another level or 2 so long as you promised not to give that information to anyone else. Even your own children. The Yondaime, though, went up to level 20 with the help of an Uzumaki, and he was known as the strongest ninja of our time. Naruto smiled at that. His clan must have really been something. He couldn't wait to reach that level of skill with seals, but he didn't know how. Old man, how am I going to reach level 20 without the aid of my family? He asked, with determination and the will to never give up. Naruto. The Hokage replied sternly, startling Naruto. Look at you now, what you have become with absolutely no help. Sabotaged, even. Just because no one is there to hold your hand, don't give up. You have the potential to do anything if you apply yourself properly, and don't you forget it. He's right, Naruto thought with a smile. I've come so far on my own, I don't want to rely on others now. From now on I swear to myself that I'll never give up again when the going gets tough. I swear that I'll break any and all barriers in my path, because to do anything else would be weak, and I swore not to ever be weak again. Naruto looked up at the old Kage. Thank you, old man. Thank you for showing that piece of wisdom, something I plan to live by from now on. Thank you for believing and trusting in me when no one else would. Even though you have lied to me in the past and betrayed me by keeping secrets from me, secrets that would have meant the world to me to hear, I will truly miss you when I leave. I guess you're right. Maybe you are deserving of that title of professor, he joked with a smirk. The Hokage snorted. Brats these days, no sense of respect. That's just how it works, old man. I guess you're right, unfortunately. Now, I have also added a lot of seals within that scroll, because whilst the books teach you a wide array of seals, they do not teach you more than 10 of each category. Only start using those though. Once you have completed the level requirement for it, the seals are labeled with a number which marks their level. Naruto nodded his head in understanding. Now, let's move on to the other scroll. As you might imagine, it contains the information you require on Uzumaki techniques as a whole, not just the Uzumaki clan. There is a book on the Uzumaki fighting styles of Uzukin and Koiken, 2 taijutsu styles that work together in tandem. There are also books and scrolls on the Uzumaki Kenjutsu style, left by one of your parents. It's a feared style that is also considered a hidden technique due to it using some techniques that use dark energy, a powerful form manipulation of chakra. Furthermore, there are around about a few hundred jutsu in there for you to learn from each element. If you want though, you could create more seeing as you're already heading down that path, Naruto-kun. Naruto nodded his head. I most likely will. Thanks for all of this, by the way. I appreciate it. He replied earnestly. It was true. Apart from the Uzu thing, just one more question. The Hokage nodded and Naruto took a breath. There's no going back after this. I might finally know the truth, but is that a good thing or will it be what I think it is? Which of my parents was an Uzumaki? You're the Hokage paused, he hesitated. Naruto realized that the Hokage understood the importance of this question now. The old man swallowed nervously. Your mother, Kushina Uzumaki. But I have a feeling you already knew that, and as such I've figured out who your other parent is. Naruto was about to smile in triumph, but schooled his face. Yes. Would you care to explain how you figured it out, he asked. Naruto chuckled slightly. Should a magician reveal his tricks? He joked, but then answered. Well, going by the fact that a child's characteristics are usually passed on from the parent with the stronger, more developed chakra network, the chakra DNA transference theory, and that I have blonde hair and blue eyes, I can draw a few conclusions. Firstly, my father had a stronger chakra network than my mother, and Uzumaki whom you said had Jonin to Kage reserves by the time they were 16. This also shows that he had higher than Jonin standard reserves. Probably Kage level if we are to go by the fact that there is so little of my clan traits within me. Furthermore, he had blonde hair and blue eyes, very distinctive traits as no civilian has had that hair color or eye color that I know of. Only clans. These are the Yamanaka, Senju, or Namikes. Looking at the professor, he could see the man was practically smiling now. He was nervous though, his nervousness seemed to be permeating the air. Just a little more and then I'll have the truth good, or, most likely, bad. That then leads to the probability that I am from one of these clans, seeing as the rarity of such hair colors is 1 in 300,000 outside of a clan. That and none have joined the shinobi force, let alone have Kage reserves. We can take away the Yamanaka as none have been reputed to have Kage level chakra reserves. They're even famous for having small reserves. Also, should I have been a Yamanaka they would have adopted me if my parents had died, but they haven't, so they aren't. That leaves Senju or Namikes, both having candidates. The Senju have Tsunade of the Sannin, strong, Kage level and would have been 37 when I was born. There is also the fact that she has left Konoha and may have decided to leave me behind as a parentless orphan, if she had the choice, you know, me being Konoha's Jinchuriki and all. This all puts her as a good possibility except you already said my mother was an Uzumaki. So she's out, unless she used some spectacular medical jutsu that allows women to get each other pregnant, a technique lesbians around the world would kill for. But I find that unlikely. The part about the jutsu, not the lesbians, that's probably true. That leaves one Minato Namikes, the last of the Namikes clan, Yondaime Hokage, Seal Master and the one who sealed the QB into me. He paused for a second and watched the Hokage closely, but the old man gave away nothing other than his previous nervousness. He continued. Now, he's male, has blonde hair and blue eyes that match my own, has a similar facial structure, has Kage level reserves and has a reason as to why I would be an orphan after he died, and not the last Namikes. 2 things more than that, though, lead me to believe he is my father. First of, I do not think I just happened to be the closest baby to the best candidate for my father/Hokage the night he needed to seal a giant fox into a newborn baby. But sealing a bijou into his son who he had been with when he was being born, that makes more sense. Secondly, the fact of why I am personally favored from birth by our reigning Hokage who most likely doesn't even have enough time to visit his surrogate grandson, but does anyway. This shows that you most likely have a reason that outweighs your constant duty to Konoha. Probably guilt, shame, a sense of owing my father, and sorrow for what the village is doing to the Yondaime's last will and legacy. Add this all up and it without a doubt points to Minato Namikes being my father. He claimed calmly, solemnly, not letting an ounce of doubt enter his voice. He would not let the old man believe that he himself did not believe in this tale. But then he shrugged his shoulders nonchalantly. But then again I could be wrong. So tell me, which is it? Am I right? Or am I wrong? Watching him, Naruto saw that the old Kage didn't move in the slightest. He was motionless, his face a blank mask, he was unreadable. Other than the fact that a sort of nervousness permeated the air, like a thin blanket of frost. The Hokage brought his hand up to his mouth and drank from the glass he held, stalling for time to gather his answer. He didn't have to wait much longer. With a sigh, the old man answered. Yes, it was simple and short, not answering anything else. Don't bother with the reason why you kept his name from me. I understand that perfectly. All this hate I get every day may turn to love and adoration, but it would be pointless if I never lived to see my teens. Don't blame yourself for protecting me, I should be thanking you. That was the last thing he wanted to hear, the old man explaining his decisions and asking for his forgiveness. Forgiveness he could not give, but he could offer understanding instead to stop the guilt flowing through the Hokage. He had felt just as much pain because of the third's decisions, as he had to the fourth's. What he needed right now was to vent some rage on his limitless supply of clones, yet another use for them, anger release, or control, or whatever else you wish to call it. To the clones, and him by default, it was could pain. It looks like I was right, the truth was what I didn't want to hear. How do you feel about him, your father the fourth? The Hokage asked tentatively, obviously scared of the answer. Rightly so. Looking in the old man's eyes, he smiled warmly to get his point across. I respect him greatly as a Hokage. In fact, I couldn't think of a better example of Kage than he. The things he'd done and sacrificed for Konoha are beyond measure, showing his will of fire to its fullest. But as a father, well, he paused for a moment, thinking on how to answer. He smiled again as he looked at the Kage. Let's put it this way, if I could, I would free him from the Shinigami's demonic grip. The old Kage smiled at that, thinking along the wrong lines, thinking he would save Minato. How wrong he would be. Just so I could open the gates of hell and throw him in with a letter of introduction to the devil, so that he knew who he was torturing and why. Naruto took a small, but sick delight in the way the Kage's eyes widened and his jaw hinged loose, the way his hands clenched the table in shock as they started to crack the wood, but he didn't care. No, what he did care about was the fact that he could now blame the fourth as not only the sealer, but his father Oswell. Finally, years of guessing whether Minato Namikaze, he spat the name like venom in his own head, was truly his father or not was over. He could blame him because he knew the person to blame was truly his father Oswell. It felt like hours before the Hokage replied, but it was probably just minutes. I see, he said simply, sadly. He looked out the window where the summer sun was shining through, lighting the room where it hit. I cannot blame you for that. It was a terrible thing to do as a father, but the correct thing as a leader. I'm just glad you understood that. Naruto nodded. It was good he understood Naruto Oswell, or else he would have slapped some sense into the Sarutobi's head with a mallet from the kitchen. He sure as hell wasn't coming of as the bad guy in this, not like usual. He is mainly the reason why I am here though, to talk about his side of your heritage and the Kekkai Genkai you have received from him. Well, not him, because he never unlocked it, but rather from his parent, your grandmother. Any guesses on this one? He asked with a hollow laugh. He blinked owlishly though. Kekkai Genkai? And from his father's side, but one his father hadn't been able to unlock. That almost seemed unfathomable. The fourth was already strong enough without a bloodline. What does a god among men do when you give an extra tool of mass destruction? More? He couldn't really think of what it could be, but chose the only one he knew that could be unlocked. Sharingan? Sometimes you're just too smart for your own good, I swear. The Hokage sighed tiredly. I was considered one of the most intelligent shinobi of all time and the god of all shinobi, yet you're making me look bad. Yes, Sharingan. Naruto was floored. He couldn't actually believe it. He had suggested Sharingan, but that was a joke. He had expected some unheard of and weak one like, say, the manipulation of paper. It was mainly surprising because the Uchiha clan had been slaughtered, so any with family bonds to the Uchiha who had a small chance of unlocking the Sharingan were tested and tried, but none found. Yet he was there, and related to the Uchiha. He couldn't help but think of how much it would piss off the civilians. He laughed at the mental image. Of course, this was also brilliant news. He had Sharingan. Possibly. He needed to find out why he might be able to unlock the Sharingan when his father, the Yondaime Hokage, couldn't. After all, he might never unlock it, and it would just be wasted hopes. By his calculations, by taking in the dilution of Uchiha DNA within him, he only had 3.25% to about 7.5% chance of having Sharingan. The Hokage carried on. Your grandmother was Nagisa Uchiha, mother of Minato Namikaze, daughter of the Uchiha clan head, aunt of Mikoto Uchiha, who was mother to Sasuke Uchiha, the current clan head. She was also not a very capable shinobi, only ever reaching the rank of Chunin, and as such was married off by her father to a strong shinobi, Shin Namikaze, or as he was commonly known, Yellow Death, for his destructive capabilities with lightning and fire. There was an agreement between Shin and the Uchiha family that should Minato awaken the Sharingan, then he would become an Uchiha. If not, then he was free to be a Namikaze. Your father, though, never awakened it, and as such never joined the Uchiha family, but always kept close ties with his cousin, Mikoto. You, on the other hand, are free to remain in Uzumaki should you awaken the Sharingan. Naruto paid rapt attention to the small insight into his family, paying attention to his grandfather especially. The Yellow Death was quite similar to his father's Yellow Flash. He considered it was almost like a father-son thing to pass on the yellow title. If so, Naruto sure as hell wasn't going to carry it on, because if someone called High Yellow anything, he would tear the testicles off with a barbed fishhook. What surprised Naruto more than anything, though? He had family. Albeit only a second cousin, but family nonetheless. But then he also remembered how he and Sasuke fought over everything, and how they usually couldn't stay in the same room together. He'd have to change that. He had knew Sasuke was the last Uchiha, but had figured he would have been so distantly related to him that he wouldn't really count as family. Now, though, he figured he was close enough to actually be labeled family. It was strange, though, realizing that. It brought up a slew of emotions, all varying. There was relief, in the fact that he might finally have someone he could wholly trust. He felt happy that not everyone related to him had died. Although both Uzumaki and Uchiha had been massacred, he was also annoyed, angry at the fact that his only living relative was a stuck-up, arrogant prick. His mind, though, picked up on the disaster this held for his escape. How could he leave his only family member behind to a bunch of vindictive liars? He would leave on his own, but he would never like leaving behind only relative behind. Does Sasuke know that I'm his second cousin? And how do you know that I have the Sharingan? I don't even have dark eyes, which are a trait held by all eyes that hold the Sharingan. The Hokage laughed again, what seemed like the rolling, booming chuckle of a grandfather who had just heard his grandson's stupid question of why. Could you just not realize the small details once? Couldn't you make it easy for me tell you what I need to when I choose to? He asked to himself. He sighed, but you are right. Sasuke should know, in fact you should tell him. Knowing that he hasn't lost, everyone may start to heal his broken heart and sanity. Naruto quirked his eyebrow at that statement. He had always thought that Sasuke was ill mentally. He had a sort of darkness about him that seemed to lurk at the edges of everything he'd done. But to be declared insane, even if only partially, by the Hokage showed he was far worse than Naruto had realized. Had Sasuke given in to his hatred, his lust for Itachi's blood? Had his vision on reality been warped into that of a dark tunnel of blood-covered walls, a tunnel that paved the road to Itachi? Was he Sasuke? He didn't want to think that someone he knew, even someone that he had never particularly liked, was walking that sort of path, but he had already known it about Sasuke. Naruto already knew what it was like to have a dark life, one full of horrors and pain. It was hell. He wouldn't wish it upon anyone, except most of Konoha. He nodded. Sure, it'll give us time to talk. Although, I will probably need mine and my father's birth certificate to prove it to him. The Hokage hesitated, but acquiesced to the demand. Very well, but those documents must not be shown to anyone, understand? He asked seriously. Yes, good. Now, as for how I know you will, or rather, have already unlocked the Sharingan. Naruto choked on his drink, rasping out a what? Yes, you already unlocked it. It happened the day you turned 7, when you were attacked by the mob around the time the Uchirakas died. He gave Naruto a sympathetic and guilty full look, eyes brimming with love and other emotions. It made sense, he realized, from what he knew of the Sharingan. From what he knew, the Sharingan was awakened during an extreme emotion of love lost, usually through losing a loved one to death, or through very stressful situations, usually a near-death experience. His situation had been both. The Uchirakas had recently just met their end and Naruto was expecting to meet his that night. But that all still left one question. Why don't I remember it? Why haven't I used the Sharingan, like when I fought Mizuki? He asked. The Hokage frowned at that. He looked guilty again and Naruto didn't like that. What did you do? He growled out. Couldn't people just tell him the truth, stop hating him for no reason, and let him make his own goddamned fucking decisions? No, people would feel like they hadn't filled their daily quota of fucking Naruto's life up. Heck, they should just celebrate it well. There was his birthday, he thought. I'm sorry, he sighed. When I noticed you had awakened it I panicked and had it sealed, along with your eye color and hair color, he admitted, sighing again as if a large burden had just been taken off his back. Whole lot of good it did, Naruto. Why you shriveled up bast wait. Sealed up my eyes, their color and my hair color? What the hell does that mean? You see, the night it happened you didn't just unlock your Sharingan, you unlocked your Uzumaki chakra. Naruto shot him a look of incomprehension that the old man must have seen. Well, when an Uzumaki is born they have any hair and eye color, generally. But in their first life or death situation they unlock their chakra, which is far more potent and stronger than any other chakra. It's why you all get such large reserves. It also has other effects. This is because the first Uzumaki to ever live was the first Jinchuriki in history, sealing the Kyuubi into him almost 2,000 years ago. When he had children they all gained minor boosts from their father's demonic chakra, which strengthened their own exponentially, and was later dubbed the Uzumaki chakra. Furthermore, when the chakra is awakened it changes certain aspects of a person, such as hair and eyes, and makes them great hosts for bijou, such as you are. This happened to you that night. So what I did was place level 11 seals on you that cast the genjutsu over your eyes and hair, changing their colors from purple and red, respectively, back to blue and blonde. After that I placed a level 13 seal that made you forget of the Sharingan, and the events after the attack. I'm able to remove them if you like. Just how many more secrets about my past, family and blood do you know? Naruto asked. He was very tired of this. Every minute he found out something life-changing, and that had started about 20 minutes ago. He didn't need any more except if there was a way to leave Konoha. He'd take that change. He'd make, or was at the moment. Can't I just know everything about myself beforehand? I mean it is my bloody right, and no fucker has the right to withhold it from me, you included. I understand you may have thought it was right for me or God knows who else, but I've gone through enough shit to at least know myself because everyone else seems to think they know me. His voice was near to a shout by the time he finished, but he didn't care. There was a few moments silence, filled only with the sound of birds chirping outside. Eyeing the Hokage, Naruto realized that he was angry, but even more so guilty. It seemed that the Hokage really was sorry for what he'd done, but that did nothing to mollify Naruto. This was just all so ridiculous. First, he gained the forbidden scroll of seals and every technique within. Through his own ideas he had found out he had 3 elemental affinities. Then he had gained a clan. And then lost it. He had gained a heritage of the hardest art to learn in the elemental nations, Fuinjutsu, as well as a whole hidden village's technique library. Then he had found out that Konoha had betrayed his clan and left them to die. Next he had found out his mother was an S rank, one who was said to have been feared for her kenjutsu by even the 7 swordsmen of the mist. If his old bingo book was to be believed, his father had turned out to be that arsehole Minato Namikaze, and made him a walking target for any and all Kumo and IWA shinobi. Then he had found out he came from a second clan, they just happened to have been massacred as well. He had a cousin, or second cousin, but he found it easier to think of Sasuke as a cousin, without the technical shit. His eyes had turned out to have been the bearers of the all-powerful Sharingan, something he would gladly kill to have, but had taken away from him the moment he had unlocked it. He had lost his hair and eye color, but he didn't care about those, they reminded him too much of him, and now it seemed that the old man had more to spill. Brilliant, just fucking brilliant. What was he going to do now? Tell him there was a bunch of S-rank shinobi out for his head, not counting the entire village of Iwagakure that stood around 20,000 something shinobi strong? Or did he have some sort of massive destiny to save the world from some power-hungry fool who claimed to be doing it all for the greater good, when in actuality he just had a grudge with some other godlike bitch? Just what could he have to put the proverbial cherry on top? Hopefully it wasn't another fucking retarded mistake of a choice made by the Hokage. Or he was just going to lose it. What? He asked bluntly. Your godbrother is Kakashi Hatake and so is Sasuke Uchiha, and your godparents are Jiraiya of the Sannin and Mikoto Uchiha. Naruto pushed his hands through his hair in exasperation and anger. Why were people so infuriatingly stupid? Hokage-sama, could just take of the seals on my memories and eyes. You can leave my hair as it is, and then could I ask you to leave? I need time to think, vent anger and recollect myself. He asked, or demanded. He just couldn't be asked to stay with a Konoha ninja for any longer or he was liable to kill them, Kage or not. The Hokage's expression soured at that, his eyes brimmed with unshed tears, his jaw was clenched stiff. His drooped, and he stared at the table. His voice cracked a little. I see, very well, Naruto-kun. I will do as you ask. This must all be so much to take in, he said, as if trying to comfort himself more than Naruto. The Hokage stood and walked over to Naruto, a slowness to his step that most would have attributed to age but was more from the grief he was feeling. Naruto could tell his words had hurt the old man far more than he had intended, but did not care. This man had caused him the same, if not more, pain than his father had, loneliness as well. Fingers blurred at insane speeds built up from years of use. 42 in almost 3 seconds, by Naruto's count. Genfuin Jutsu, Akamuka Igeo. Kai with his forefinger and index finger held together, the others intertwined and clasped to the opposite hand, the Hokage poked Naruto's head. Naruto saw something like an invisible layer over his eyes tremble and dissipate, wavering into nothingness. He realized that was just the Genjutsu seal that covered his eyes being removed. All that was left now was his memories, and the unlocking of his alleged Sharingan. Not paying attention, Naruto only just saw the Hokage pull his fingertips away from a second technique. Shortly afterwards he felt a sledgehammer hit his mind as memories he had forgotten returned to him with something that felt like a hangover. He groaned. Oh, that hurts. Standing up he looked at the Hokage. Thank you for today, you may go now, he dismissed. The Hokage went to leave, but threw one last thing on the table, a slim, gray bank card for Konoha's Shinobi Bank. Naruto picked it up and pocketed it. I have put the Uzumaki and Namikaze funds into it. This does not mean I'll release your connection to your father though, that must remain secret. The code to open it is your birth date. He opened the door to leave. I would invite you out for dinner, but you haven't come out to eat with me since the Ichiraku incident, another mistake to my list that I cannot repair. Goodbye, Naruto-kun. With that farewell he had closed the door and left, leaving Naruto alone to himself. Standing by the door for a while, a small part of him listening to the singing birds on the other side of the door, but mostly focusing on everything that had just happened. Today he had gained a few things. The knowledge that he would be able to use 3 different elements to a much better degree than most others. His clan and many things about them, nature and shape manipulation guides, a bloodline, parents, a cousin, and money, lots of money if he was right. He smiled, this could only be good for his escape. No, it was great. If anything, his luck was now tempting fate itself. Only bad things could come of that though. He just hoped it didn't. Deciding he was late for his training, Naruto created 8 clones. 1 clone would be on Fuinjutsu scroll, 1 on the shape transformation book, 1 on the elemental manipulation book, and the last 5 would practice the exploding clone at one of the training grounds. He himself would be doing a lot of physical exercising to maximize his training results. With this he would also test the memory backlash with the clones once they had received substantial knowledge, and not just battle memories. If it wasn't bad, he would add more clones and keep repeating the process until he found the best possible training effort. Before he went to leave himself, he filled his water canteen with sake. He really could do with something, anything to do other than training, but he needed to prepare himself, no matter how shitty his mood. Naruto Uzumaki was a survivor, and he would never let anything stop him. Well, let's get running, he said to himself tiredly. 5 whole laps of Konoha would take him half the day, and then he would have to start the rest of his training. Hiruzen lowered himself onto the sofa in his office. It was extremely comfortable and always took the weight off of his tired bones, despite what it looked like. He had covered it in a strong genjutsu seal that couldn't be broken unless another seal was placed over it. The image it gave off was a large, hardwood throne befitting of a kage, not the comfortable sofa it really was. It made for a good intimidation factor for clients, subordinates and diplomats alike. It was very useful. Tiredly, he started to work on the paperwork in front of him. Naruto's words had more effect on him than he thought. First he cleared all of the low-level stuffs that could be done by his secretary and sent them through to him, then he moved on to his things that actually needed sorting. After 20 minutes of mind-numbingly boring paperwork, Hiruzen was relieved to hear a knock at the door. He didn't seem to have the mental energy to organize, stamp and write up what he needed to today. "Come in, Asuma," he called, noticing the familiar chakra signatures. Asuma walked in at a lazy pace, his hair rugged and disheveled, wearing a standard Jonin uniform but with a ninja guardian sash around his waist. He also had a cigarette glowing between his fingers, smoke wafting the air. A lot of, if not all, Kages would have taken great offense to this action, but Hiruzen just had to sigh at his son's defiance. He supposed, Hokage or not, all children would rebel against their parents, and there was not much to be done about it. The next was the beautiful Kunoichi, commonly referred to as Konoha's Ice Queen, both for her beauty and her ice temper that could make even the strongest of men terrified. Her long black hair contrasted to her pale skin and red eyes, but matched them perfectly as it framed her face, the red and white of her clothing wraps accentuating her curves wonderfully, and leaving a lot of the legs to be seen. Stunning. She bowed at the hip. Unlike his son, Kurenai was the epitome of professional. Kurenai was always calm, respectful and highly practicing of being the perfect role model for all Jonin and Kunoichi. Lastly, unsurprisingly, was Kakashi Hatake, a man feared across the elemental nations for his speed, strength, ninjutsu, intellect and famed Sharingan, his gravity-defying hair bouncing slightly as he walked in, sitting above the slanted forehead protector that covered his left eye. Another oddity about his face, or what you could see of it, was that it was covered by a mask which, when matched with the forehead protector, allowed you to only see the top right-hand side of his face and his right eye. It left a very mysterious image of the renowned elite Jonin. Kakashi wore the standard Konoha Jonin uniform, a green Konoha flak vest, dark blue shinobi trousers and long-sleeved shirt, dark blue, fingerless gloves, so as to not impede his ability to make hand seals, ankle tape and shinobi sandals. He also held the Ika Paradise book in one hand so often that most considered it as a part of his uniform. Despite the laid-back and lazy attitude that Kakashi gave off as he openly read porn in front of his superior, Hiruzen knew that Kakashi's mind would be working through countless possibilities for this meeting, creating plans of action for said circumstances and also digesting the latest sex scene in Jiraiya's novel. He'd done all this, and looked like the laziest person alive. "Father, Hokage-sama, good morning you three. I hope my umbu didn't have to wake you all," he asked politely, although he knew they all got up at around 5 every morning. "A fine morning, Hokage-sama. And no, we were all at the new restaurant down by District 7, Kurenai informed before Asuma could say something. I'm glad to hear as such. Also, I have heard that this new restaurant, the Fledgling Leaf, is a most excellent establishment." Kurenai nodded. "Yes, Hokage-sama. I would recommend it myself." Yes. He mumbled as he lit his pipe, signifying that it was time for the reason of this meeting to come to light. Picking out a file from the many that littered his desk, Hiruzen created 2 shadow clones of the file, making it a total of 3 which he proceeded to hand out. Each of his shinobi took the documents, and started to read them. After several minutes and the rustling of paper, all 3 Jonin had read the file. Each of them, other than Kakashi, had looks of shock on their face. Rightly so. Thoughts? Suggestions? Hiruzen asked with a smirk. He didn't like much about the position of Hokage, but he definitely enjoyed the pleasure of surprising experienced Jonin. Kakashi was the first to recover, though that was mainly due to him knowing half of it. "Is there anything else about him that isn't on this file that you tell us, so that we know everything before we make a decision?" he asked, showing his experience and analytical mind as he looked for information that wasn't there. Although most would have assumed this was all for a failed academy student, in fact, it was absurd. The written account for last night's conversation wasn't all of it. Quite was the Hokage curt response. "He knows of his heritage, Kakashi," said Jounin's eye widened in shock, whilst the other 2 Jounin looked at Kakashi in confusion. "He has now declared a keen interest in Fuinjutsu, and wishes to surpass his ancestors. Furthermore, it appears he has awakened his bloodline unlike his father. It is born again." Kurenai just groaned and rubbed her forehead. "Damn prodigies, making it look so easy." She growled in annoyance and glared at Kakashi. Kakashi just chuckled sheepishly and rubbed the back of his head, before turning serious and looking at Hokage. "Well, honestly, a promotion to Chunin whilst keeping him with a Jounin sensei is the perfect choice." His reasoning was also spot on with those teams from the information he had. His espionage abilities are amazing, and his combat skills are soundly Chunin. He answered. "I'm feeling a bit here, Kakashi." The Hokage asked, but already knew why himself. Yeah, what's wrong? Asuma asked, not seeing what was wrong. Team selections. Now that he knows his heritage and his bloodline, I asked to take him on as my apprentice, not just a student. I could swap Naruto with Choji. That wouldn't be too bad and would fit with the structure that Naruto made, as they were both meant to be the close-range specialists. Wait. Asuma barged in, his hands waving in front of him. 1. What's this about his heritage? 2. What's his bloodline? I'm sure I would have heard if he had one. And 3. Why do that? He's got a wind affinity, and I am the only one that can teach him that. Kakashi sighed. I'm not trying to take you away from him because he has a lightning affinity, Asuma. This is far more personal. Also, his heritage and bloodline are a secret that only 3 other people know about, so I can't tell you. Hiruzen watched as Asuma seemed to calm down a little at that and frown. He only hoped that Asuma didn't fight over this. He had already made his mind up. Look, Kakashi said exasperatedly, if you want solid reason for why I'm a better choice for him, then let me give you some. Naruto needs to be trained with a sword, not chakra knives. You are a B-rank threat with a sword, I'm an A-rank threat with a sword. Naruto needs to be trained in wind, fire and lightning. You can train him in wind only. I can train him in fire and lightning. Naruto needs training in Fuinjutsu to achieve his latest goal. I'm an expert Fuinjutsu practitioner. You only know how to write the word Fuinjutsu. And lastly, I'm one of his 3 legal custodians. Is that good enough for you? There was some tension in the room now, that much was obvious. Everyone knew that Asuma was looking for a student to pass his wind manipulation, as there was only one from graduation every 10 years, the rarest of all elements. To him, this was his chance to pass everything he knew on to someone else, for someone to carry on his legacy. Asuma stared Kakashi down for a few moments, but relented with a sigh. Fine, but I can still teach him wind release every now and then, okay? Kakashi nodded in agreement. Good. Now what's this about you being Naruto's legal custodian? Yes, I would like to know that as well. Kurenai added. He can't tell you the reasons why. It's confidential, Hiruzen informed them, stopping that line of conversation. He didn't want to answer any of those sorts of questions today. And Kakashi, your request is granted. But I want a full report on his skills, everything down to the last detail. Now, all these suggestions by Naruto will be carried out with him switching with Choji, dismissed. 3 shinobi disappeared in a puff of smoke, except for Kakashi, who used the leaf shunshin and left a nice pile of leaves in the middle of the office. He motioned for an unfortunate Umbu recruit to clear it all up. Today had just started and Hiruzen had a feeling that it was going to get worse somehow, much to his annoyance. He took solace, though, in the fact that he had found a full pouch of marijuana hidden under his work. He took it and sprinkled some into his pipe, enjoying his small victory. Hiruzen enjoyed the small things. The small things are important, after all. Seconds are small things, and if you heap enough of those on top of one another, they become a man's life. He thought to himself with a small smile, but it then turned to a frown. He remembered the way that Naruto had called him Hokage-sama for the first time, no longer Gigi. Yes, the small things mattered. They mattered a lot, but now his small victory seemed so insignificant to that one word, that one loss. He tried to force a smile, to reassure himself, but his soul didn't feel the need. This sadness wasn't bitter, it was sweet justice for his mistakes. This was his punishment. A tear caressed his cheek, following the contours of face, the lines from years of smiling, but today he didn't smile. He would never forget that tear, as he reflected on his life. It was his punishment. End chapter. Please, just stop. I promise I won't prank you anymore, he promises pleadingly as he curled into himself, blonde blood-matted hair covering his eyes. A dark, throaty chuckle rippled through the ally. It bounced off the walls, surrounding him in an eerie silence of laughter. He ignored the man and continued to cover his vital areas with his arms and legs, curling into himself whilst protecting his head with his arms. This was the carefully constructed defense of someone who was used to danger. We know you won't be alive come tomorrow. Again his laughter reverberated against the walls, joined this time by his peers. The laughter escalated, magnified, multiplied as it joined and conformed into a chorus of joyfulness that mocked him, using something so happy to mark his sadness, his loneliness. He felt the presence all around him, crushing and crumpling him to the ground, by the power of darkness. Within himself, despite his little kingdom of eternal sorrow, he sought an inner strength wrought of fire and steel. His proverbial sword of hope. He sought his own little refuge within himself, his palisades of stone and steel walls that would protect his inner self from the outside world, his hell. He started the exercise that he had read from a book that Itachi had left inside of the scroll. It was called the Flame and Void or Oneness. First he pictured an endless void within himself, something where nothing existed for all of its eternity. Empty. Once he had that nothingness, that empty zone where nothing grew, like an infertile field where no life could grow and none take residency upon it, he moved on to the next stage. Steadily, he cultivated and grew a flame within his mind, within the void. With a spark, it ignited and came to life. At first it was weak, blowing in the non-existent wind of the void, flickering in the darkness of the endless nothingness. Then, suddenly, the glow roared and the flame grew, a perfect source of warmth and destruction. It was intense and full of life. He moved on again, this stage the hardest and most important. All concerns, emotions, thoughts, feelings of pain and even concerns of life and death, were fed into the flame, being destroyed as they came into existence. This allowed for the user, himself, to perceive reality as it is, in the present moment. Pain and fear became passing phenomena, fleeting feelings that were irrelevant. The separateness of himself and the enemy disappeared. There was only the void. He had read, from the book, that this technique was used by warriors of old that were simply referred to as blade masters. They would use it when they were entering battle, allowing them to destroy all emotions that may have clouded their vision, or force them to make mistakes. It was also able to destroy pain, making cuts and bruises and even lost limbs irrelevant, allowing the user to fight at full capacity. It also allowed for what some would call superhuman perception. With all fears, pains and concerns taken away, the human brain was able to process and react to information at a much better rate, allowing them to best many other combatants that couldn't access the void. It was an excellent tool. As his concerns were all thrown into the flame, he watched grow exponentially within himself. The fears and pains he now felt as his attackers began their assault, battering and beating his body, were quickly thrown into the flame as well, feeding it further. He felt no pain, he felt no fear, he simply was the void. It was a strange sense of being, to have no emotion, no pain, no concerns. It was like being hollow, as though something was missing, except nothing was missing, just gone. He focused more and more on the flame as fear and pain started to grow, to expand. He quickly quelled them with the flame, but they rose up again like a decedent rising from his shallow grave. It was becoming a battle of attrition. Would they give up their attack first? Or would he give in? Time would win either way. The flame started to shrink, to grow cold as it started losing its battle. It appeared time wasn't on his side either. Like a sea of blue wisps, they probed and tested the defenses that the flame held, licking and kicking at its orange glow, beating it down. Through the haze of blood and blonde hair, he realized he had already lost. The man who had laughed the loudest brought out a knife. It looked like none of this mattered in the end. The void would not save him from blood loss. His calm resignation to death would have shocked him any other time, but the void and flame fought it down. The flame and void shattered suddenly as the knife was plunged into his stomach. The emotions, fear, pain and all of his concerns came back with interest. The pain magnified itself upon its arrival, like a tsunami that had receded to build up strength, and now the pressure had reached its limits, and it had hit back hard. And just as strongly came his sudden fear. He coughed out blood as the knife was pulled away. It felt as though molten lava had just been poured onto his stomach and cooled off just as quickly with liquid nitrogen. He watched as the blood poured out of his stomach, slicking up his hands as it traveled through his fingers. A scream pierced the bleariness he now felt, reverberating of the walls just as much as the laughter. Louder though, he noted unconsciously. Feeling it was important, he looked up to see what had happened. He was shocked and hopeful at what he saw. Tall and proud, an Umbu agent stood there in vivid detail that surprised him. It was like he had suddenly put on glasses and was no longer blind. The world around the Umbu was a mess as the bodies fell dead to the floor, blood splattering everywhere. The dog-masked Umbu turned to him, and the last thing he heard before the blackness reached him was the shocked muttering of a word that made no sense. Sharingan. He knew only darkness afterwards. Naruto's eyes shot open. It appeared he had had a dream, a nightmare of that night. It was the recollection of awakening his Sharingan. A very, very vivid recollection. Getting up out of bed, he realized that his body was drenched with sweat. It was obviously as intense as he thought it had been, especially now. He rolled the sheets off and threw them at the washing basket, and quickly put some others on afterwards. That done, he went to the bathroom, deciding to get a shower now that he was awake. He needed to loosen up and wash away the sweat, but he also needed to clear his head to do some thinking. So, when he stepped into the steaming jets of water, he felt completely at ease, like a small weight had been taken from him. The throb of the water as it splattered into his back was almost hypnotizing, each droplet of water massaging his shoulders, head and back in rhythmic blows. It was times like these that he enjoyed, the little things like these. Because, in a world where everything hates you, the little victories are all that we have. He thought cynically, chuckling a little to himself. After another 20 minutes, 10 of hot water and 10 of cold water, his annoying landlord must have realized that he needed the hot water and had cut it off out of spite. Bastard, that done little to relax him. Naruto walked out of the shower dripping wet. He shivered slightly at the rush of cool air, but got dried quickly. A minute later he found himself dried, dressed and ready to go, but was instead stood in front of the mirror. The focus of his attention was his eyes, their deep, dark violet staring back at him. His real eyes. He had always thought that eyes he wore were lies, nothing but the image of a happy child, not one with regular dates with tragedy. They always looked so bright, so full of life. His eyes were actors on a grand stage, but now it seemed their show was over. No longer did he lie to people just by looking at them, instead he held truth in his gaze. Looking at the deep violet eyes that seemed to glow and shine, he couldn't help but smile. They shined in a way that showed the striking visage of sadness and loneliness. His new actors did not have to pretend, they fitted their role on stage perfectly. Their gaze saturated to the core with deviousness, cunning and intellect, so piercing he might consider them knives of ice. These were true eyes, and he couldn't be happier about it. Getting an idea, he channeled a small amount of chakra to his eyes. He watched intrigued as his violet eyes seemed to fade and melt into a blood-red eye. The red iris was ringed with a thin, black edge. Furthermore, the pupils seemed a little wider, and lastly, there was a single black tomo on each eye, signifying their stage development. The other things he noticed was how clear everything seemed, just like that night. He noticed that things stood out in finer definition, such as the small, almost indistinguishable coffee stain at the bottom of his shirt. It was unnoticed at first. In fact, he had checked himself to make sure that stain was gone after he had washed it. Now these eyes easily picked up on the stain as though it was a bright white on his black clothing. He noticed he could see further, as he looked out of the window. Colors were more vivid, so much more life in them than they had before. It was as though he had been watching the world through squinted eyes until now, like he was truly seeing for the first time in his life. It was addicting, almost. A bird flew past the window, but it seemed slower, its movements more sluggish and effortful than what they had always seemed. Waving his hand in front of his face had the same effect. Slow. The world around him had been slowed down. He blinked back in surprise though as he focused on his hand. It was glowing a sort of white blue, and his glow was incredibly intense, like looking at the sun too suddenly, and almost getting blinded by it. He knew this was his chakra though, and he had the feeling that no one else had as bright a glow as he did because of how dense, and how much chakra he had at his disposal. So, Stage 1 unlocks the Uchiha's perceptive clarity capability, chakra perception ability, and the fast movement tracking ability. He mumbled to himself with a smile. He stopped letting the chakra flow to his eyes, letting them drop back into their wonderful violet. Instantly he felt a sort of sadness at the lack of better sight, like coming down from an adrenaline rush. It all felt so euphoric. Shaking himself of the feeling, he focused on what he had to do next. Talk to Sasuke. Well fuck. Sasuke pulled on his last piece of clothing, a blue shirt with the Uchiha crest. It completed his usual set of traditional Uchiha clothes, a blue, short-sleeved shirt with a high collar, and an Uchiha crest on the back and white arm warmers, completed with a pair of white shorts, blue shinobi sandals and the leaf headband on his forehead. Walking downstairs he started off his daily ritual. First of all he would go to his parents' room in which a small shrine was dedicated to his parents and clan, though it mainly focused on his mother and father. He would then proceed to tell them how he was doing and to promise that he would avenge the clan by killing his beloved brother. After this he would have some breakfast and prepare a lunch. He did this to prepare him for the day of training and so that he wouldn't have to return to the house until about 8 at night, meaning he had a lot longer to train. Before heading out though, he would do some routine stretches to make sure he could start at a jog instead of walking. His jog took him around the entire Uchiha compound, through every street and every close, everywhere that an Uchiha lived. He'd done this as a reminder, so that he always knew what he was fighting for. Revenge. It was also to honor his fallen clansmen, in a way. He didn't want any of them to be forgotten, and as such had memorized the name of every clansman killed that night, even the children. The sting of Itachi's betrayal hit him every morning, like a whip that continued its punishment. But day by day, the sting lessened as his skin toughened and protected him from the whip's lashes, or his heart was just used to pain so much that it didn't bother him anymore. He remembered the times that he and his brother used to spend together developing his skills in combat, just laughing around, or even just in silence. His brother always knew the right way to treat him, never once getting it wrong well, disregarding the massacre. Most of all though, he had remembered how Itachi hadn't pressured him, had never downplayed his abilities, or compared him to himself. He had been able to step outside of his brother's shadow and become a person in his own right, and it was all thanks to his brother. Those had been the happiest days of his life. He cleared his head of those thoughts and focused on his jog as he reached the Uchiha forests. It was not good to look at the past. It was already a fixed moment in time, and couldn't be changed. The future though, well, there was room for anything in the future, it was just so tangible. A shuriken embedded itself into the ground a few inches from Sasuke. Acting on instinct he jumped backwards as more struck the ground where he had been. Several showed their trajectory as coming from the tree tops to his left. His hands were already in motion as he retaliated with a barrage of shuriken to where the others had came from. He heard a distinct popping sound, as though something had just exploded into air. From the sound he concluded the thing he had hit must have been some mist or smoke-based clone. Ducking, his ears picked up on the sound of a blade swishing over his head. So they were going for killing blows. They must have been here to end Konoha's famed Uchiha clan. He smirked at that. It seemed some nations, this one being curious if the mist clone and sword were anything to go by, were already scared of his power and potential. It would be common courtesy that he at least put on a show for the man he was about to kill. Then, two kunai spun and he caught one in a reverse grip, and the other in a normal grip. It was just in time too, as the masked ninja spun around and swung his sword in a diagonal arc from his left shoulder down towards his right thigh. He gritted his teeth as his two kunai blocked the slash with a spark and loud clash, the strength behind the swing pushing his arms back. Realizing that strength was in his enemy's favor, Sasuke used his opponent's momentum to let his sword pass next to him as he sidestepped into open space. He aimed for a quick slash at his opponent's shoulder, hoping to disable the use of one of the assassin's arms. He didn't expect him to recover that quickly though, and had to pull back and block another slash at his head. "Who are you?" he growled out in annoyance. This fight wasn't going to be as easy as he thought. His opponent had excellent strength and speed. "Itachi Uchiha," the masked man replied cockily. "You're so dead now," he growled mentally. Dropping down, he sent a swipe kick at the assailant's legs, but missed as he jumped up and away. Perfect. Keeping low and getting to one knee, Sasuke dropped his kunai and ran through a set of hand seals at a rapid pace. He routinely breathed in the air, collecting it in his lungs, quickly kneaded it with just about half of his chakra reserves and started to breath it out of his mouth. As the chakra-soaked air began its journey, Sasuke pushed fire chakra into it, setting it ablaze. The stream of fire left his mouth but was already shaped into a large ball as it shot towards his opponent. "Katon, Gokai no Jutsu," he cried out as the flames no longer streamed from his lips. Gleefully, he watched as the man in black was hit by the large fireball that shot towards him, engulfing him in intense flame before he could land. The man did not cry out in pain though, much as Sasuke had expected. No, instead he had watched the cause of his death burn him alive without making a sound. With it over, Sasuke applauded his combatant for testing him so. "You were extremely fast and strong, but you were unable to use that sword to a suitable degree. If you had used taijutsu, I am pretty sure you would have won. You died like a true ninja though, silent in the face of death." He praised his opponent with a smug smile on his lips. "Though, of course you would lose to an Uchiha. We are the elite ninja of. You should really just shut the fuck up." Sasuke cursed and turned to face his supposedly dead enemy. He cursed again as it seemed the sword had disappeared and was now going to approach him in taijutsu. "I should have just shut my mouth." He berated himself mentally. His left hand came up and deflected the incoming fist to his face. His right hand sent a heavy hook for the man's face but missed. He stepped back and leant his head back out of the way of a very fast jab. Stepping back again, Sasuke started to panic as the punches started to rain down on him in heavy and extremely fast combos. Constantly backpedaling because of the need to avoid the punches, Sasuke found no opening to exploit as he simply wasn't fast enough to get inside of his opponent's guard. Quickly, he felt the effects of his enemy's punches. His punches were starting to bruise up Sasuke's arms. Seeing the need to take a risk, Sasuke sent a kick up to the ninja's head, but was blocked by a forearm. Using it to push off and somersaulting back, he sent a quick kick out with his left foot and caught the ninja's chest. As he landed, he threw out some shuriken to stall his enemy. Performing a set of hand seals again, he replicated the same process as earlier, but this time in small bursts. The result was around 6 small and fast balls of fire heading for the assassin again. Making sure to do all that he could this time, he threw 6 shuriken to follow in the shadows of the miniature fireballs. "Katon, Hozenka no Jutsu." It was to no avail though as the enemy substituted with a log. Damn his reflexes, he thought angrily. With a scowl he searched the wooded area for his enemy, hoping that the enemy had decided to retreat. "Tajikage Bunshin no Jutsu." A voice cried out, and suddenly about 30 of the masked assailants came into existence. Solid ones too, if the shadows of the clones were anything to go by. Sasuke was panicking now though. He could barely handle one of these guys, and that was with a full tank of chakra. Now though, he had about 10% of his reserves, little energy left, and was acing all over. "Shit! I can't win this. I need to escape somehow," he thought desperately, but had to quickly start fending off punches left and right. What he'd done next he would never remember. His body was just on autopilot. A kick or punch would come in and he would try to divert it with minimal effort. Clones circled him, dropping in and out of view as he took hit after hit, but only managed to dispel 4 of the clones. Slowly, though, his opponent's attacks began to slow down, gradually becoming easier and easier to divert, then block, and then he was even able to counter. He was also able to start reading his opponent's movements, becoming easier to predict what he would do next. The world around came to life in startlingly vivid clarity. Before he knew it, only 2 remained, the real one and 1 more clone. Once again he allowed a cocky smirk to play across his lips, although it was fake. He knew that solid clones only held 1/10 of the ability of their creator, so he was outmatched against him. He also only had about 8% of his chakra left, as 2% of it had drained for some unknown reason. If he carried on and lost 3% more of his chakra, he would fall into the chakra exhaustion zone of 5%, and he would pass out. "That's most of your weak clones, asshole. I'll give one chance to leave here with your life for giving me an excellent Naruto?" he asked in surprise. The masked figure had taken off the whole-headed, black cloth mask. Blonde bangs fell down his face, framing it, the rest just flopped out into a messy mop of hair. Whiskered cheeks and purple eyes also caught his attention, especially the eyes. What the hell are you doing attacking me?" he shouted angrily. "You could have killed me." To his surprise and anger, Naruto just laughed. What he said was an even bigger surprise though. "Well, isn't that a requirement for unlocking the Sharingan?" he asked with a joking smile and pointed to Sasuke's eyes. It was then that he realized. The way he was able to more easily predict Naruto's movements, how he slowed down, the newfound clarity in his sight, and now that he checked, Naruto seemed to be glowing a light blue from where he stood. It all made perfect sense. Pulling out a kunai, he checked the reflection. Sharingan, he whispered as he stared at his eyes disbelievingly. But why? Why did you help me get them? I thought you hated me? He asked, still somewhat shell-shocked. A gift, Sasuke. Something to make you a little bit more inclined to listen to what I have to say. Besides, I never did hate you, you just didn't like the fact that I'm stronger. He smiled again, but it was more of a smile that showed he was planning, or had just witnessed a plan together. Naruto looked around at the torn-up forest. Shall we go inside to talk? Sasuke nodded his head. Follow me. He commanded simply and walked straight for his house. He didn't wait to see if Naruto was following, he knew he would. So he walked, either he or Naruto saying a word as he considered everything that had happened. He made sure not to let his guard down now, though. He wasn't stupid. After a few minutes' walk they had arrived at his home. Sasuke ushered a guest into his home for the first time in 5 years, but paid it little mind. Drink? He asked. He was unsociable, but would always abide by household etiquette. His mother had beaten such values into him at a young age. Got any fruit smoothies? Then I'll have a tomato smoothie, a green one if you've got it. He asked as he sat on a kitchen chair. He quirked an eyebrow in surprise. You like tomatoes? And tomato smoothies? Naruto nodded his head. I thought I was the only person that could stand them. Here you go. He gave the pre-made smoothie to Naruto, who started drinking it straight away. Moving round to the other side of the dining table, Sasuke peeled out a chair and sat down. How should he start this? Bluntly, he supposed. He didn't like beating around the bush. So, he asked, what do you want to talk about? He didn't tell Naruto, but for the favor he had just done for him, Sasuke was willing to give him half the Uchiha's bank account or a motherload of jutsu. The least he could do was listen to him, even if he didn't like him. Well, he didn't like anyone for that matter. This. Naruto pulled out a small envelope and threw it onto the table. Read both birth certificates before you say anything, okay? Good. This was one strange morning. First he had been attacked, then he had unlocked his Sharingan, then he had found out it was all Naruto and a plan to awaken his Sharingan, and then found out that was just an incentive for the Uchiha to listen to him. Now he found out it was all for his birth certificate, but he went and picked it up anyway. It must be important if he went to all this trouble. He subtly ran his hands along the small, yellow envelope to check for any hidden traps. It didn't matter though, Naruto caught the action and smiled, that and there were no traps. Pulling out the certificate, he began to read. But after only about 2 seconds he dropped the paper and stared at Naruto. Minato Namikaze, the Yellow Flash, son of the Yellow Death, SS rank ninja with a flea on sight order, the man renowned for the IWA massacre, notoriously one of the strongest ninja to ever live, a man with a kill count exceeding 20,000 on his own, the Yandame Hokage, hailed as the hero of the leaf, and apparently Naruto's father. What he started, but was stopped by Naruto. It's true. Don't say anything. Just read that one, then read the next. He ordered sternly. Sasuke was going to object. Who the hell did he think he was? But then he remembered his deal and closed his mouth, even though he would have rather stabbed himself. Still shocked by what he read, Sasuke picked up the piece of paper again and read. Father, Minato Namikaze. Mother, Kushina Uzumaki. Kushina Uzumaki. Another S-class, renowned ninja was Naruto's parent. And if he was right, this was the Kushina Uzumaki who was his mother's best friend and teammate, also his godmother before she died. That made Naruto his godbrother, or some such thing. That would have to wait for later. Again, he read on. Godparents, Jiraiya of the Sannin and Mikoto Uchiha. Well shit, he noted how it was ironic that both of them had lost their real parents, but their godparents had died as well. They must have both pissed Kami off somewhere along the line. Deciding this crap was all becoming too much, Sasuke pulled out the last sheet so that he could get this over with. Reading it though came as an even bigger surprise than the last. You're an Uchiha. He all but screamed. He couldn't believe what that all said. Naruto was the grandson of Nagisa Uchiha, his great-aunt. That meant he had family again, or one that he hadn't sworn to kill. He was close family as well. Not just some cousin that's connected to him 13 generations down the line. This was what he hoped for years. Ever since that day, Sasuke had practically wished for an Uchiha family member to show up out of the blue. To defy all odds and come home. He had wanted it so bad, just so he could talk to someone, let alone have family again. After the incident he had wanted to talk to someone, anyone, about what he felt, what he wanted. A shoulder to cry on, even. But his Uchiha pride hadn't allowed him to lean on anyone else's shoulder, to talk to them about it all. What happened to his clan was his business, and his business alone. Yet it hadn't stopped him wishing for someone to be there, and now there was. He couldn't believe it, but the birth certificate for the fourth had the Uchiha crest on it, marking it as real. The one for Naruto also had the third seal, making that authentic as well. Are you how? He stumbled on his own words, stuttering like a fool. He didn't care though. Naruto chuckled to himself as he watched. Sasuke still didn't care. The Yellow Death was married off to Nagisa Uchiha, or the other way around, to strengthen the Uchiha name. They had a son named Minato Namikaze. There was a deal that should he awaken the Sharingan, then he would take on the Uchiha name. He never did and so remained Namikaze. Sasuke nearly choked on thin air. If the fourth had borne the Uchiha name, their fame and infamy would have increased 100-fold. How they missed out on that was beyond him, but it answered some of his questions. He went on to have a son, me, but no one knew. You see, the night my father died I was taken by the third and placed in an orphanage with my mother's name, all to keep me safe from my father's enemies. The Uchiha never knew I was an Uchiha descendant, and as such never laid claim to me, and Itachi never killed me. That was very annoying, in fact it was enraging. The third had been the one who had told Sasuke he would do all he could for him, but that was just a bold-faced lie. He had known all along that Sasuke was craving family, and he had forgot to mention there was some family he still had left in Konoha. He also took in the fact by how angry Naruto was, noticing the way he glared at nothing in particular, and the clenching of his hands around the wooden table. The third had only recently told Naruto as well, it seemed. Trying to think about it, Sasuke just couldn't imagine what it would be like for an orphan to find out he actually had family, and then to find out they had been kept from him. Although, that all went out the window when I awoke the Sharingan, against all odds, and the third had to reveal my heritage to me. That answer your questions? He asked as he activated his own Sharingan. Sasuke observed the Sharingan intently, noting everything about it. He also tried a genjutsu release to make sure it was real. When he had confirmed it, Sasuke smiled. He didn't smirk. He smiled for the first time in 5 long years. His wish had been granted, it seemed. The one about family, not the one about Itachi swallowing his own tongue and choking to death. Ah yes, it does, he answered slowly. But what do we do now? He asked. He was glad for a family and all, but it had been so long he just didn't know how to act around people properly. He usually ignored all girls and answered most questions with a grunt. This was a strange situation for him. Naruto raised an eyebrow questioningly. You're asking an orphan that question? Seriously? He sighed. I don't know. I guess we just get to know each other better and take it from there. He stood slowly, but started stretching out his muscles. Smirking, he decided to do the only male bonding exercise that he knew. Want to fight? Naruto raised his eyebrow and smirked back. Sure, I give out arse kickings for free. Laughing to himself, Naruto carried an unconscious Sasuke into his bedroom. He dropped him onto the bed with a heavy thump, then turned to leave. It was only Sasuke's call that stopped him. Naruto, you can use the spare bedroom. It's too late to walk home, so you might as well. He offered, mumbling as his face was squashed against the pillow. He thought about it for a minute before accepting. He couldn't be asked to walk home anyways. Sure, see you in the morning, he replied as he walked out. A few minutes later he was laying down in an extremely comfortable bed, one that made his lumpy piece of crap feel like iron in comparison. But it was to be expected. This was the Uchiha head's house, so he doubted they would have anything but the best. Even the bedsheets were made of fine silk and had hand-woven pattern on them. Looking back on the day he couldn't help but smile. It had all went so perfectly. His original plan to awaken Sasuke's Sharingan had worked, and now the Uchiha heir would feel extremely indebted to him. That had led to Sasuke believing the documents far more quickly than he may have done under different circumstances. It had even made it easier to get Sasuke out of his shell. During their hours of training and sparring, Sasuke had, after some prodding, opened up and talked a bit. It had been fairly simple stuff, such as he was upset after he lost his clan. How it felt to lose everything in a day. The hurt of his idol's betrayal. The anger and hate he felt towards his brother, and promise he had made to kill him. In return Naruto had told him about the Kyuubi. How he hated his father for it. The law behind it. The way the villagers treated him, including the awakening of his Sharingan. He had went into a lot of detail about his mother's clan, and how he knew Konoha had left them to rot. He had also told him about the fact that he had been made Chunin, which actually spurred him on to train harder. All in all, Naruto had had a great day. Especially when he had beaten Sasuke again, he had thought that the shuriken that had lodged itself in his arm had beaten him. He was good. But he thought I was finished, with only one arm. He didn't understand. I only surrender when I'm dead, he thought with a small chuckle. But now that Naruto had started it, he was going to continue to cultivate Sasuke's hate for Konoha. He already had very little loyalty to the Leaf, but now hearing about their treatment of Naruto, and how they had left Yuzu to die, Sasuke's loyalty was waning, and Naruto could see it. It would only be a matter of time. Naruto had further cemented Sasuke's trust by teaching him the tree-walking exercise and helping him complete it in one night, allowing Sasuke to now channel chakra around other parts of his body successfully and safely. The result had been that he could now use chakra to reinforce his limbs to make himself faster, stronger or even more resistant to damage. It also made the chakra he needed for his fire jutsu to cost a lot less, shaving off about 1/4 of the amount used. It was a shinobi must, the basics. Closing his eyes, he smiled as he realized his plan to save Sasuke from Konoha was working well. He just needed something now, something that would push him from Konoha altogether. So, you going to tell me why you haven't used your clan vaults before? Naruto asked. He had woken up that morning and had a slightly awkward breakfast with Sasuke. When asking what he wanted to do that day, Sasuke had said he had wanted to see what was inside the clan vaults. He knew what was in there, jutsu their clan had copied and the such, but he didn't know specifically. You need Uchiha blood and to have unlocked the Sharingan to even enter. I haven't had the last until now, so I might as well try and open it. He answered nonchalantly. Whatever, let's just go in. Sasuke seemed to prepare himself as he took a deep breath, and then he walked forward and went through a set of seals, slammed his hands into the double doors. A few ninjutsu seals spread out from the point of contact like a spiderweb over the door, covering it all in incomprehensible writings for any but a few ninjutsu practitioner. The seals suddenly receded and the door slowly swung open with a groan, creaking from the lack of use. Opening, they started to reveal their secrets. It was a few seconds full of suspense for Sasuke, he could tell, but it was also a little intriguing for him. When the doors were fully open, they revealed a large warehouse of stores, much as they had suspected. The building was easily 4 times the size of Sasuke's home. Air rushed in through the doors, grasping at their clothes as it passed them and entered the vacuum. On the way over, Sasuke had told Naruto about the impenetrable vault. The walls were made of a special kind of chakra-nurtured metal, giving it incredible strength and resistance. Furthermore, the walls were lined with amazingly complex seals that absorbed all chakra-based techniques that hit it, just in case someone tried to break in using ninjutsu. This meant no chakra-based attempt could break into the vault, and the special metal made it nearly impossible for anything else to get in. As the lights blinked on from the ceiling, Naruto and Sasuke entered slowly. The blinking lights shined to show many, many things. All around he saw rows upon rows of metal shelves that held scrolls upon scrolls, most labeled with supplies, kunai, shuriken, saban, explosive tags, bandages, gauze, antiseptics, smoke pellets, flash tags. Further along he saw stacks of katana, naginata, kodachi, chikudo, ninjato, bow staff and other weapons. In another corner, mannequins were decked out in wide varieties of armor, ranging from lightweight clothes and medals to full-stacked samurai gear. Well, fuck, were we involved in some sort of war when the massacre happened? Or is this just in case Konoha needs a full set of supplies for its entire army? He asked Sasuke. Well, we never did get along with the Hyuga. My father may have been planning on having a small spat with them, Sasuke tried joking back. Yeah, let's go with that. Maybe we should have a look around. You never know, we might find something interesting and useful. Sasuke nodded his head. Yes, we might. If you see anything you like, feel free to take it, he offered, hesitating only for a moment before leaving in the direction of the weapons. He's trusting me more and more every moment. Especially if he's willing to part with something that belonged to some of his old family. That's good, Naruto thought to himself. After walking through most of the aisles, Naruto hadn't found much more. Having checked to see how many items each scroll held, he found that one scroll contained usually 100 of its contained items. Furthermore, he had found roughly 600 of each scroll, meaning there was about 60,000 of each item, weapon or tool. The Uchiha certainly had been prepared. Coming down to the last aisles, Naruto spotted Sasuke standing by some sort of hidden door that was now open. Walking over showed him that his cousin had picked up some sort of chikudo with a dark blue casing and completely flat and rectangular handle with no guard. It looked pretty nice. Copying me now, are you? He asked jokingly. Sasuke snorted. Don't kid yourself. I just needed something to stop you from lopping my head off. Kunai just don't cut it. Naruto shrugged with a smile. Well, what's through there? He asked. Looking through, he couldn't actually see anything on the other side of the door. It was probably a genjutsu. Use your Sharingan. Nodding, he activated it. The blackness quickly disappeared and allowed for a clear view. Instead of a room though, he only saw a small closet of sorts, the space only going about 3 feet deep and about 6 wide. A simple shelf holding several items. In the center was a ruby red scroll that simply read Sharingan. To the left was a plain white scroll labeled Jutsu. To the right was a deep blue scroll with the words Interceptor Fist written across them. Each of these scrolls were the size of baby, showing they contained something large, or just many things. Against the wall was a large map of Fire Country. Several key points had been crossed. There was also an enlarged map of Konoha with most of its priority buildings circled, the Hokage Tower, the hospital, the academy, the Umbu Barracks, according to the map, dozens of gathering places for lots of civilians, the communications tower and various random buildings. Over the map were red lines depicting travel routes for attack and escape. Points where enemy forces could be forced into a chokehold were underlined. All the lines ended up in one place though, the Hokage Tower. From there the attackers, it seemed, would blow up all surrounding buildings and create a circled trench around the tower to keep any forces from interrupting. Traps were already planned to be set in that area as well to stall for as long as possible. Whilst that battle was going on, it looked as though an elite force of 20 were to kill the Hokage and his guards. The council was also supposed to be in session at this time. So, after killing the Hokage, the elite forces would take the council hostage and force them to surrender Konoha. This was an Uchiha coup d'etat, wasn't it? Sasuke asked calmly, rhetorically. Yes, and a bloody good one at that. He answered. It was true, that plan most likely would have succeeded, especially if that elite force had a certain weasel on it. Even without Itachi, with the Uchiha's 20 best attacking together, the Hokage would have been hard-pressed, especially with his age and the fact that he wouldn't be able to use any dangerous techniques because of surrounding civilians. The third soft heart would have been his downfall. He looked at Sasuke and realized what this all meant. Itachi killed the Uchiha for a reason, not just power, and had been loyal to Konoha this entire time. By proxy, this meant that the Uchiha massacre was a mission sanctioned by the Hokage and Konoha. Did Sasuke know, though? Seeing a small trail of blood run down Sasuke's hand, where it continued to drop and splash against the floor, Naruto realized just how tense he was. He figured it out. A smile splayed across his lips as he thought of how much easier it would be to manipulate Sasuke against Konoha with him. This was his diamond in the rough. You realize what that means, don't you? He asked quietly. Sasuke's scowl deepened, as did the tension in his hands as blood trickled out at a faster pace. His eyes seemed to be staring into nothingness, but it also seemed to be focused so intently it could be called sharp. A low growl emanated from his thought, almost as shallow as a whisper. Yes, he said. Itachi Uchiha was under orders from Konoha, the Hokage specifically, to eliminate the Uchiha. I always thought his cover story was strange and fallible down to the last detail, he noted idly. It was true. He had always thought that an Uchiha killing his entire clan to prove his power was partially believable. But if that was true, why did he kill the elderly, untrained children and even babies? Surely they were not the slightest test of power for an S-rank shinobi. Then there was also the fact that he only killed Uchiha that night, and no one realized that the clan had been attacked. Even with Konoha's excellent seal system that alerted the Hokage of any large amounts of chakra usage outside of training areas. It all seemed to be a very poor excuse. I meant we are the same in the fact that we bear a dark burden to protect Konoha, one that no one else can. We are, or, in my case, will be, hated for was what Itachi had said to him that night, and it had left the seeds of doubt and curiosity in his mind about the Uchiha massacre for years. Only now did they start to make sense. How do you feel about this? He asked curiously, but put a sympathetic hand on Sasuke's shoulder. Come on, tell me. It's not every day you find out something like this. Well, for me it's starting to. For a few moments Sasuke said nothing, just stared at nothing. But then he said it changes nothing. Itachi betrayed the Uchiha, just in a more literal way. Well, it changes one thing. Konoha are as much to blame as Itachi. He snarled and suddenly lashed out with a punch to the wall, making it crumble and crack where his fist hit. Damn them. Naruto smiled behind Sasuke's back. This was all happening perfectly. Sasuke had first been softened up by Naruto telling him of how Konoha had treated him for saving their worthless arses. Then there was how he had mentioned the way he wasn't ever told the truth, always lied to. And lastly, there had been the way Konoha had not bothered to aid Yuzu as they fell, their greatest allies betrayed in an instant. The picture he had painted was perfect. Konoha were vindictive fools who lied and cheated anyone, and then, without a care, betrayed closest friends at their whim. This had left Sasuke questioning his own beliefs and trust of Konoha. But now it had all happened to him, and he had jumped to the same conclusion as Naruto had painted. The best part was that Sasuke realized it on his own, making the belief all that stronger. Sasuke, he said quietly, I know what it's like, that feeling of betrayal, but first of all you need to calm down. He soothed. Sasuke spun round, about to unleash a slew of angry retorts, but stopped himself. The anger stayed in his eyes though, specifically the left one which held two tomo. Why should I? He seethed through gritted teeth. Because you need a calm head to decide what you're going to do next. He noticed Sasuke raise an eyebrow in interest at that. We can't have you going off half-cocked and trying to kill the Hokage. You'd be dead and your revenge would end there. Instead, why don't you do what I'm going to? Fine. Tell me what you want. He demanded, anger still flaring. When I found out about all the secrets had been kept from, realized I could never be happy in Konoha because I was only seen as a monster, that I had been betrayed by those I trusted, I decided enough was enough. I started planning my departure from Konoha. He smirked at that. He also remembered his more destructive plans than the one he was going to use, but they would all get him killed. His cousin frowned for a moment, but smiled as it obviously dawned on him as to what departure meant. You mean going rogue, abandoning Konoha? Yes. I'm planning to do it on our first E-rank, but that is only if a chance presents itself. If not, I was simply going to wait until a mission comes along that I could. After that I was going to bargain my way into another village, or look for a missing nin to teach me. Why don't you join me? There is nothing left for Konoha to offer you. With you now possessing the Uchiha Jutsu library, he pointed to the thick scroll on the left, then to the other two, and the scroll on your clan's fighting style, and its knowledge on the Sharingan, you wouldn't need a teacher, you could teach yourself. Add all that to the scroll I got containing all of Yuzu's techniques, and some other things I have, we could become unstoppable. What about money? Supplies? He asked half-heartedly. Naruto could tell he already had Sasuke, but decided to make him completely join his side. Supplies? He laughed and threw his arms around him. I'm sure we could wage war with these supplies if we wanted to, and then have some to spare. And money? I have the Namikaze and Uzumaki funds, And you have the Uchiha fortune, we could buy half of Fire Country with that kind of money. No, we have more than enough of anything. Kunai, shuriken, weapons, smoke bombs, exploding tags, flash tags, medical supplies, poisons, sealed foods and drinks, armor, jutsu, knowledge, money and shinobi technique guides. Turning back to face Sasuke, he smirked and decided to hammer home the nail. With all of that, and without Konoha dragging us down, we could gain the power to beat Itachi, to avenge our clan. He held out his hand. So do you want to join me, to forsake Konoha and reach our true potential? To storm the elemental nations with such power and fury that they'll compare us to Madara Uchiha and Hiroshima Senju? No, they'll compare them to us. Almost without hesitating, Sasuke clasped Naruto's in his own. A determined grin on his face. This was the answer to both their dreams, their prayers, their deepest desires. This was their destiny. They both squeezed each other's hand firmly, a gesture of reassuring strength. It was a turning point that would forever mark itself upon the elemental nations. Together, we will show the world to fear our names. What if Naruto is stoic like Itachi? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel. And leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.